it.
Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Yeah.
Now for me that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
And these are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice 40. texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.
Oh, meant to be another Thursday.
Always on Thursday, every single time.
With my boy Glenn talking shh IT.
One more time.
We got a whole bunch of IT tonight too. It's actually a nice combination, grab bag of technology, a little bit of science, technique. Definitely one that I'm going to be looking forward to, and
Very important.
trying some different styles.
Nice.
All
And
good
different types
stuff.
of instruments.
Yeah, that's actually what intrigued me the most about it. It wasn't just like, trying a different cultural style of music. It's getting to know new styles of instruments that you don't typically see in other cultures.
Exactly. Excited. It should be very cool.
Yeah.
Got a few different
Yeah.
things.
And to start off, there's been a lot of big news going with Cakewalk. This has been one that, went back to the middle of last year where they announced they were going to start to make Sonar a paid product, and Cakewalk for BandLab is kind of going away. They've got Cakewalk Next kind of as a bridge that really looks a lot like the BandLab editor. Anybody who's comfortable with the BandLab editor, Next takes it to a local level. Like it's a local DAW, runs VSTs, has the BandLab effects and all the goodies that you get from BandLab integrated into a local DAW.
Exactly. And the VST thing is the big one there.
Yeah, and it does introduces bus mixing and all the advanced things that like you could never really do with the BandLab app because not being a local application, the VST support is non-existent.
Yeah. And I remember that bus mixing was the other thing that was big on your hit list.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, between this video and another one, we kind of tackle both those subjects a little bit tonight. This one, Mike, Creative Sauce was the first channel when I started to really want to learn Cakewalk and get to know like the advanced features. Creative Sauce has been the absolute best starting point for getting comfortable with Cakewalk. It was one of his DAWs that he really promoted a lot. So given that it's about to become a paid product again, and Mike's changed studios over the year and has other aspects to his channel that are really important, big to him. So his commitment to Cakewalk right now is kind of in that confused moment of am I going to continue on with this DAW or am I going to start to shift towards in his case what's the one that you use with your
Studio One.
Studio One? Yeah, that's kind of where he's shifting to, and he talks about like what's going on with Cakewalk and what he's considering doing with his content. He's still a Cakewalk guy. I hope any of you out there who do follow him at the end of this do as he asks there. Go check out his new account that's more open ended because with what's going on with Cakewalk, he kind of has to do that.
Right. And don't forget that a lot of times if you buy a new piece of hardware, for example, when I bought a mixer, I got, some, local DAW software. And then, you buy a recorder, like a Zoom multi-track recorder, and it'll come with some software. So any of the different pieces of hardware you might buy, you might have gotten some free software that you didn't look at some point that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ableton is one of the most proficient DAWs that comes with practically every piece of hardware. So these are the like gateway DAWs that they try to get people comfortable with things. But in the long term, you do end up picking like the DAW that feels the most comfortable to you and
Yeah.
easy to understand. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you don't change often. If you do change often, you're either a real record producer who has a project coming from this guy and it happens to be in Pro Tools, and project from this guy happens to be in Reaper.
Mhm.
Only excuse for like using a lot of different DAWs would be because you want to work with source files. You want to be able to adjust VST and things like that. So you take what your clients give you.
Mhm.
Otherwise, when you go to make music, you have a DAW that like that's your go-to.
Right. I could see people having a different go-to DAW depending on the project, or like you said, depending on which band they're working with, where, like you said, sharing files with these guys this way and sharing files with those guys that way. But at the same time, also just in the general sense, like I know we've talked before about, how it would be cool to have like a virtual machine and put all the different softwares on there so that we can jump into any of them, whether it's just to see how something works, what the workflow is like. Because talking about the, which is comfortable for you or for anyone, it's good to be familiar with the workflow in all of them, because you might prefer, this software for when I'm working with a small project of just guitar and drums or whatever. But I'm going to use this software if I'm trying to do something orchestral and I'm putting in a whole bunch of other stuff. So I might have different reasons to use the different DAWs.
Yeah, and I've actually been asked a couple times in the past few weeks on how to set up a virtual machine
Mhm.
specifically for this kind of situation where you need to convert something or you want to be able to load it up, and the virtual machine is a nice solution.
Mhm.
Next week. Next
Ah,
week we'll set up a virtual machine while we're checking stuff out.
nice. Sounds like a plan.
It'll be a good way for people to see how easy it is. Like in the course of one show,
Mhm.
I can create a virtual Windows on a machine and load that up and test whatever I need to without messing up my music machine.
Exactly. That's what I like about virtual machines. Little sandbox. Build a little sandbox.
Yeah. Anytime you really want to test something or see if it does mess up your computer, mess up a virtual machine because it's disposable.
Mhm. Yep. Exactly.
The physical machine's a pain in the ass to like get set back up and get all the drivers, the software the way that you want it. The best thing you can do is do that once, get it to a nice clean setup, and
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
image the hard drive. And that way in the future, if you do need to reset back to zero, you just pull that image, wipe C, replace that, and you're back to that clean foundation.
Hmm. Yep. Always used to be the way I like to do it.
Yeah, without having to set everything back up. So after we see what's up with Cakewalk, this is one I've been wanting to check since last year. When we had our gear night,
Hmm.
and I didn't get a chance to get to this one. But for me, monitoring is something super important, but it's also a piece of equipment we don't tend to think as much about or spend properly
Hmm.
on what's useful. And for a monitoring technology to actually be innovative, because it's not a technology that changes drastically in music,
Hmm.
but this is a big change when you can get an in-ear system that has the kind of spatial and clarity that they're getting wireless. This is the kind of monitoring system I would want on stage.
Yeah. And the fact, I mean, from the little that I saw so far of it, talking about ambient, being able to get outside volume in, because one complaint people have a lot of times about monitors, excuse me, in-ear monitors, is the fact that they kind of block out everything else that's in the room in a lot of cases. So being able to dial in, basically what is stage sound, or be able to hear, if someone comes over to talk in your ear, you want to be able to hear that. If they're not near a microphone, you don't want to have to broadcast it out in order to hear it. So being able to have some of the room sound coming in through the headphones or through the monitors would be
Yeah,
useful in
you,
my book.
you're not actually just monitoring the music, you're monitoring the environment, which sometimes helps a lot.
Yeah, and having control over it, where if there is too much stage volume, you can just dial that down, and now you're more protected from loud sound on stage. Oh, the guitar player is playing too loud, with a guitar that's too sharp or whatever, and it's right next to you. You can turn the outside sound down, and now you're protected more.
That's the key. You got to be able to adjust those different things, mix it to what makes you comfortable, because monitoring, if you over monitor, it'll mess your performance up. If you
Yep.
under monitor, it'll mess your performance up.
Yeah.
You got to find the perfect monitoring level so it doesn't get in the way of what you really need to be listening to.
It does help a lot for sure.
Yeah. So that one's
Great.
going to be coming from Scott Ohl, another channel that we came across last year.
Nice.
And from there, another one that I've had discussions with over the last couple of weeks, as far as mixing approach goes. And top-down mixing is one of those things that you have two camps. And he, Joe Glider over at Home Studio Corner, he mentions, the differences, the benefits, and why there's two camps depending on the approach that a mixer takes, what can get in the way of doing top down.
Yeah, because there are certain things you got to keep in mind when you're doing that stuff. We'll definitely check some of those out.
Yeah, most engineers prefer to actually start with silence and introduce the track in. It's easier to kind of find the leveling, but the arguments tend to be is that, like, with top down, it's actually faster, and some of it's workflow and how your ears work as an engineer.
Right. And what you're mixing also, is this a live thing? Is this a recording that you have that you're working with, all that kind of stuff?
That's a big factor. And here's a little physical technique talk that I'd always known, but never really thought of. And when it comes to piano players, and probably so with guitar players too, there's a certain rotation technique and your posture. Everything that they try to tell you as a kid, like, you got to really have good posture and in order to play at your best. There's some thought that goes into, like, your rotational technique.
Indeed. And even the way you choose which fingers to use for which keys when it comes to keyboard, since we're talking about that, it's not always going to be, if you're playing fingers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if there's sharps in there, flats in there, it's not always going to be the finger you think it might be that you should use, because sometimes it depends on what's more natural. Sometimes it depends on what will hit the note more evenly, like, to the same volume of what you just hit before it. So there's different things to keep in mind when you're choosing fingerings and things like that on the keyboard. But all of that, with some of it is about keeping the wrists flat. We talked about that, like being able to play and not have your wrists bent way back. Like, you don't want to be high above the keyboard with your wrists bent way back, causing problems for your carpal tunnel and in the back there. So you got to be in a comfortable playing position and all of that. So there's a lot of that involved, as well as the rotation, like you're saying, how far in or out your hands are, which way you go. I've seen people who play arpeggios, and if they're doing like 3-ups, like and they're doing something like that, they're actually sweeping their hand in circles as they're doing it, kind of like they're like washing the car, just little circles like that.
Arpeggios, rotation plays big time into arpeggios and sweeps, and you're gonna love the advice you hear in this one comes from top pros in music.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah, that's coming from Tone Based Piano. Love them piano channels, and I love this one.
Nice.
And speaking of channels that I love, the
Samurai.
and in this one he's going to try Japanese music, which I'm amazed he hasn't before. This might be his first video where he starts to get into Japanese style music, which, like I was telling you, Spar Legacy, what I've been hearing coming out of him, he's turning me Japanese, like, with every song. And what's cool with this video is he kind of explores different Japanese instruments that are unique. They're unique to the Japanese sound.
Nice.
And they're like crazy guitars.
Like stringed instruments of all kinds.
Yeah. And going back to last week when we were looking at, or last couple of weeks, the psychology side of, creativity and music, kids' perception in some cases there. Uh, we're starting to get some crazy suggestions in our video list now. So now I'm like looking at the psychological side. Last week we were looking at the effects of marijuana use on creativity.
Right.
And this one interested me because it's a more brain driven topic on our pleasure systems, serotonin and dopamine, the two ways that we trigger creatively, and the potential benefits or side effects of over triggering, over stimulating creativity. There can be a danger.
Yeah, definitely. There should be highs and lows when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a reason why you can't just keep pounding the orgasm button. You break yourself.
Don't break that button. No.
Well, he talks about it. And this last one, it's another question that comes up in our discussions, and we've been asked, like, what you can sample, how samples play into a song, and the legalities of clearing those samples so that you can actually publish your song to some of these distribution sites. Because when you are sampling, there are certain rules that apply both on the recording side, if you're actually using a sample of something, and the song owner side. They're two different licenses, and on the song owner side, you always got to take care of it, regardless of whether you're reproducing or you're actually sampling a recording.
Yeah, and a lot of people really don't check. And when it comes to things like songs you find on BandLab and all that, you'll find stuff where it's just got beats that people pulled from wherever. But people do try to monetize those things, and they do end up getting themselves in trouble that way sometimes.
Yeah. What I really like with this one, DJ Payne 1 really talks straight about it. No bullshit. Like, this is how it works and how it works in the industry. And for anybody out there who uses any potential clips, even, it's not just samples of songs. Even when you're using clips from movies and things like that, a lot of times it's not a big deal. But if you were to write that hit song that made millions of dollars, it can quickly become a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So
that's what it is. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't mind, I'll have the millions of dollars and not have to worry about it. But it's, do you really want to have to deal with all that? When you got your millions of dollars, you have to give most of it back because of issues like that, or get tied up in court and all that kind of stuff. Just do it right in the first place.
Your millions of dollars will get pissed away on lawyers to defend and deal with it in an unnecessary fashion, because it's not hard to actually secure all those licenses if you're serious about what you're doing. And he's going to talk about that.
Yeah. Very cool.
So, grab bag for our brains.
But I think we're going to start with creative sauce, though, right?
Yeah. I've been really curious what Mike's going to do. I've been following him since I got into Cakewalk. So this is a big change, and everything he's feeling, everything he's doing, I'm completely in the same boat. I'm testing the new sonar on a separate laptop, making sure it'll play nice. And I've got over 2,000 projects currently in the Cakewalk by BandLab. So I'm not ready to convert them all over to a new DAW That granted is the same. Sonar and Cakewalk for BandLab are running under the same engine, but Sonar has a much nicer graphical engine. It takes advantage of NVIDIA and 3D, where like audio display looks a lot better when these features are there.
Indeed. It's good to hear from Mike again. We haven't heard from him in a little while, right? A couple weeks at least.
Yeah, well, last year when his studio was moving, I was definitely paying attention to all that.
Indeed.
So he's talking about what will he be doing as his channel and the DAW he uses.
Let's see what he's got to say.
Is sponsored by DistroKid. Follow the VIP link in the description down below to get 7% off an already amazing price to distribute your music to the world. What on earth is the Cakewalk Product Center? What's happening with Cakewalk Next and Sonar? And what's happening with this channel and Cakewalk? Hi folks, I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. I'm going to be addressing all of those questions in this video, especially the very difficult decision I've had to make about the future of this channel and Cakewalk. But before we get into that, let's just give a quick history lesson and get us up to pace on where Cakewalk currently seems to stand. As many of you know, Cakewalk started out 37 years ago in 1987 as a MIDI sequencer. As time went by, they started to add audio features, and it really became one of the world's first digital audio workstations, or DAWs. Now, it's been owned by a number of entities over the years, including Roland and Gibson. And then unfortunately in 2017, Gibson announced that it would no longer be continuing development of Cakewalk products. Then we learned in 2018 that Singapore-based BandLab had acquired many of Cakewalk's assets and intellectual property. They then went ahead and released a free version of Cakewalk, Cakewalk by BandLab, which I still maintain is the very best digital audio workstation you can get for free. Now in 2023, around about 9 months ago or so, BandLab announced that it would also be ceasing development of Cakewalk by BandLab, the free version that is, in the near future. And they also announced that they would be releasing 2 commercial products or paid for products, Cakewalk Next and Cakewalk Sonar. Now this is where it all gets a little bit vague, because when they made this announcement all those months ago, I seem to remember they indicated an expected release date of towards the end of 2023. Obviously that time has come and gone, and indeed we're creeping towards the end of the first quarter of 2024. Now I know this is frustrating many of you. You'd like to decide what your future is with Cakewalk, and to make that decision you need a timeline, and you also need to know how much it's going to cost, and indeed how you're going to pay for it. Is it going to be subscription or an outright payment? But there are signs that something may be happening very soon. First of all, at the bottom of their webpage, they do have download links for versions of Cakewalk Sonar and Cakewalk Next. These are obviously pre-release versions of some kind for people to try out. And there's also the Cakewalk Product Center. This was announced at the end of last year, and it looks to me like it's going to be the place where you download anything and everything to do with Cakewalk. And indeed, I would encourage you to download that and start using it now to download the very latest version of the free Cakewalk by BandLab, which may be the final version. Currently, if you install the Cakewalk Product Center, it checks your system to see which version of Cakewalk by BandLab you have installed. If there's an update available, you can update it from here, and you can optionally choose to install some of the add-ons. Now, I'm going to predict that this is the tool that they're going to ask you to use to download and update Cakewalk Next and Cakewalk Sonar. But I would suggest that you get hold of this tool now and make sure you keep up to date with the latest versions of Cakewalk by BandLab until they stop developing. That is, if you wish to continue using it at that point. Now, it doesn't clearly seem to be available on their webpage as far as I can see. If you know of a download link for this on their webpage, do let me know in the comments down below. However, they did announce it on the forums. They provided a link there, and I'm going to provide that link in the description down below. Make sure you check it there. Now, before we move on to my difficult decision about Cakewalk and this channel, I'd like to mention quickly that whether you decide to use Cakewalk by BandLab or Next or Sonar to create your music and release it to the world, I highly recommend you make use of our sponsor, DistroKid. They make it super cheap and easy to get your music on platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play, etc. Make sure you follow that VIP link in the description down below, and you're going to get 7% off your first year of membership. So I feel like I want to clear up a couple of important myths about this channel and Cakewalk. The first myth is that I'm somehow affiliated to BandLab. I'm not. This channel's been around for 4 to 5 years, and in that time I've never been paid by BandLab for anything, and I've never entered into any business agreement with them. In fact, I think we've only exchanged maybe 3 emails in that time at the most, and 2 of those were about technical issues. So no, I'm not affiliated to BandLab. The second myth I see is usually in the form of a question, especially recently when people ask me, "Hey Mike, have you now abandoned Cakewalk for Studio One?" Now this question is based on a misunderstanding of the origins of this channel, because when I started this channel in 2018, I'd already started to use Studio One as my main DAW. I'd stopped or started to stop using Cakewalk in around about 2017 because of the whole Gibson thing and its uncertain future. So you'll notice if you look at the first few videos on this channel that I was actually making tutorials about Studio One. A little later on, I wanted to make a video about free DAWs, and it was only then that I discovered that Cakewalk by BandLab even existed and that it was free. So it was very easy for me to throw my weight behind this DAW, especially because it was free. I knew that it was a very capable product, and I knew I had some knowledge in it because I'd been using it for some years. But I also knew that many people would be entering the world of home recording and using Cakewalk by BandLab because it was free, and that the learning curve could be a little steep. So I wanted to help those people out. I wanted to bring them into our fold. I even made a full-blown course, the Absolute Beginner's Guide to Cakewalk, which was specifically for people who were just getting started. If you'd still like to make use of that course, there is of course a link for it in the description down below. Now, I did continue to make Studio One videos for a little while. However, I found that it was a bit confusing for the viewers of this channel. So I decided a little bit later on to make a channel specifically for Studio One. Okay, I'm going to have to be sort of bluntly honest here, I'm afraid, warts and all. Creative Source, as well as being my passion, is also my business. Okay, it's my livelihood, and I have to make passion decisions and also business decisions. Now, as a whole, it's a channel which is about home recording. It's not really DAW specific, and many, if not most of my videos are not about a specific DAW. Now, it does exist in the world of YouTube, and YouTube has algorithms which are going to work for or against you, if you like. What YouTube is not keen on is if you make, say, 3 or 4 videos that are generally going to be appealing to people, and then you make one video which is only for a small group, because all the other people are just going to flick past that video, and YouTube isn't keen on people doing that. So as a business, I'm a little bit at, the mercy, if you like, of that algorithm. So I had decided for the last few months since BandLab made their announcement to sort of wait and see what was going to happen. But I feel like it's gone on too long now, so I had to make a final decision. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, I have no affiliation or duty towards BandLab themselves. But it sort of weighed heavy on my heart because I did feel that I've got a duty towards you guys. The Cakewalk community has been like really, really supportive of this channel. You've been very kind to me. Many of you seem to like my teaching style, and I've seen you recommend my videos. And of course, we've got a thriving Facebook group as well, one of the biggest groups on Facebook for Cakewalk. And I'm really proud of all of that, and I'm proud of the Cakewalk community. So I decided that I couldn't just abandon you all, for want of a better way of saying it. And yet it wasn't going to work for me in a business way. So my decision was that I would indeed create a new YouTube channel completely and utterly dedicated to all things Cakewalk, whether that was Cakewalk by BandLab, Cakewalk Next, or Cakewalk Sona. I'll put a link for that channel in the description down below today. There's maybe one video on there at the moment when you get there. So it's going to be a little bit a while before it really starts to get lots of things on there. But I'm going to ask you, I'm going to beg you, I'm going to ask you if you would like to see me continue to make Cakewalk content in the future, because you enjoy my teaching style and we've got this relationship. Could you follow that link now and go and subscribe to that channel? If I get an awful lot of subscribers there, that's going to indicate to me that it's something that you really want. So look, I don't often push this whole subscriber thing, but I would ask you today, if you could, and you're a part of the Cakewalk community, you'd like to see me make more videos, could you follow that link, subscribe, and keep an eye out there, because as soon as I know anything, or as soon as these new products become available, I'm going to start making tutorials for them. Thank you so much for watching this long-winded explanation from me. I'd love to hear your comments down below. I'm sorry to those people who I knew, you wanted me to continue to make Cakewalk content for this Creative Source channel. I hope you understand the reasons why I don't feel that I can really do that. Thank you in advance, and I will see you in the next video.
Oh, Mike, I want to keep seeing your videos, whether it's Cakewalk or another DAW. Studio One,
Yeah, whatever you want to
I'm
use.
cool with Studio One. I'm hoping to get it with my control surface.
Nice. That would be very
And I
cool.
bet you some of his decision to use Studio One at that point might have been his hardware. Because if you've got the right hardware, like the ease of setup with Studio One and control surfaces is so much better.
Right. Yeah, it's useful for sure.
And
And we'll have to see what he's going to come up with on his
yeah,
channel.
I was creative.
We should get over and get to the
CreativeSauce.net is his like mothership here. This is where he puts his YouTube videos up, and that beginner's guide to Cakewalk he was talking about. It's good to hear that he's still going to be contributing to Cakewalk's direction. Like, I'm sure he's going to still keep using it. I can't stop using it because I have so many projects. But he's also, gearing up for potential DAW change, and it takes time to change a DAW.
It does. And again, the to me, the most important thing is, the features, of course, being able to do all the things that you need to do, but workflow has so much to do with it. And just seeing people who are experts in a particular DAW, just going through a project real quick can be so instrumental, so enlightening as to, does this look like a workflow that would make sense for me? Because if you watch somebody who's just really fast with put this here, copy this here, cut it down, slide it over here, put this effect, and boom, here you go. Like 2 seconds, they've got everything all ready to go.
And if you're switching DAWs, the first thing you're going to look at your technique and translate it to the new DAW. I use bus mixing. If I switch to Reaper, the way bus mixing works there, it's technically the same, but the approach is very different. It's parent-children folder approach, whereas in
Okay.
Cakewalk, buses are a separate area where
A separate
they're
chain.
not
Yeah.
normal tracks, and they don't just show up like normal tracks. In Reaper, they kind of do. Like everything shows up as a track.
Right. And it, like you said, different approach, but same, accomplishing the same goal, but which feels better for your workflow could change also, because the one that you've been doing, you might find that after you get used to a new way of doing it, it might actually be faster or more convenient, or, you set up, you put all the children together first, and then you throw the parent on top later, instead of doing it the way you were doing it before, or whatever. There's a couple different ways of, making these things
Well,
work
in
for you.
in some cases, the ways become easier. I think that the Reaper
Mhm.
approach is actually easier once I reprogram my brain, because I'm used to a certain workflow.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
watching someone do it, like me watching Jason use Reaper,
Mhm.
I've learned how to
Exactly.
use Reaper just watching him.
And me, I see the possibilities of how it could be used, where it would take me a while to get to that speed, but just to see how quickly you can, throw drums in there and then do this and then do that, and here's a part, and then I can copy it here or whatever. There's all that maneuvering would usually take me a long time. But again, I usually use not even just Studio One, sometimes just Capture. Like a lot of times we'll just have Capture running, which is from Studio One, part of the same thing, where all we're doing is just basically recording right off the board. So I have the board, we have the board coming through the snake, plugged in direct, and then the board is connected to the computer, and through Studio One Capture, we can just jump in and record everything right there and do a quick mix and work from there. So we just got used to using Capture all the time instead of using Studio One. And that's what the guys out there have gotten, as I've been training them, as I do things, like I have to do this and then do that. And I try to get them, to watch and we, go through it all. And just this last time, Jeff wanted to add like an intro to a part that we were doing. Like we had a part that had drums, and we were doing a whole song, part, and we wanted to put an intro at the beginning that was going to be loose timing, and it was going to be a problem to have the drums in the way at that point. So it's like, okay, I can pull the drums out real quick, and then we record you over here, and then we'll just slide this over here, and I happen to slide it to like just the right spot where it, timed out perfectly. And they're like, whoa! It's like, it's not that big
You're
a
a
deal. I mean, it's
wizard.
it's like once you do these things a little bit, and changing. We do a lot of the digital patching on the board. So like, we have Jeff's on channel 10 for his keyboard. But if we want to record the drums by themselves, we can just, I'll patch it in on, channel 12, and I'll just record it over there. And that way I don't have to physically change any wires. We can just change the patching, record that on 12, and then have it play back on 12 while we're recording him on 10. So it's one of those things that just, as you do it, again, it's a workflow thing, and it's whatever is comfortable and whatever works for the
The
environment that you're
simpler
in.
you make that capturing process, the more
Yes.
cooperation you get from band members.
Exactly. And he works on parts by himself. Like, it's at Pepe's house, so he can just, when he wants to put guitar parts on, he can just bring up the project and, open his channel, record himself doing parts, and he can do it over and over, and get the part just the way he likes it, or separate layers. Like, you see people do, using the DAW is something that it's still, I do most of the actual production when I get over there, but it's more, I love the fact that we can get parts on there when I'm
Yeah.
not always out there. Cause again, it's there. So I'm over here. Bit of a ride
Yeah,
to get
you
out
don't
there.
want everybody messing with the DAW and all the settings, but you want them to be able to like enable record and record.
Exactly. And again, when we're out there, we're using Capture and Studio One. When I'm over at the studio here over by Joey's house, we're using the I forget what it was. It's not a Tascam, was it? I have to go look at the model again. But it's the 16, and it's got 8 in the front, 8 XLRs in the front. But we're using it into Cakewalk is what we've been using as our recording, for our recordings that we do over there. So that's been, that was always good when we first started using it, doing that and uploading them to BandLab and being able to share them from there. Lately, we've just been keeping them local, just, getting them recorded and
And
working with
like
them there.
Mike said, it is the best free DAW out there at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And we're not trying to make anything complicated at this point. Like, as far as we're just trying to get parts in, and for that, it
it's
works
not
great.
going to be free for much longer, but for the last like 4-6 years, it is the best bang for the buck.
Yep. And whatever model of software or whatever model interface that we're using over at Joey's there, it came with software also. So like if we weren't using this, I just started using Cakewalk because of the ease of the BandLab integration and being able to send projects back and forth to be able to work on them at that point in time, because we were trying to get them on there and get them out. But now at this point, we're just kind of working on songs that are all original songs, and we want to do more of a finalized version. So we're doing, more our own production in there. But yeah, good stuff. And I appreciate the position that Mike was in with that, and I do hope everybody goes over and supports that other channel as well, because again, the fact that one channel is going to span the paid and free versions of Cakewalk, so that to tie the communities together.
I'm gonna find that link, Mike.
Yep, should be right there. It's got the chapters all broken out. Yep, very nice.
I will find it. I will subscribe. And over at
we'll go find that at
Creative Sauce, this has been his YouTube home, and he's also got creativesauce.net. So keep an eye on this. This is where he connects everything from this mothership.
Yeah. And as you said, it's been there for years.
Yeah, well, I will keep following him on whichever DAW road he goes. I like his teaching techniques. I
exactly the teaching style.
I learned Cakewalk from him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, so many of the tips and tricks. We did tips and tricks videos. We did, getting started with Cakewalk. We did, all there. Many of his videos we've included in what we've done here because they were so helpful to us as well as to people that we've just shown the stuff to on our own.
His whole library.
Yeah. With good reason.
And here's another one that I've been starting to go through, because when it comes to gear, the gear reviews here, definitely a gear whore. And he does give tutorials and reviews for working musicians. I mean, that's what we all are, right? At Scott O Music. And what he's going to be reviewing here, these in-ear spatial monitoring systems. I mean, this is the shit for stage. And and I'm not an in-ear guy. What amazed me, because he mentions it, like, there are those who hate in-ear and those who are okay with it. This seems to please even the stingiest who wouldn't want in-ear, because I'd be one of those.
To me, so much of it comes down to the situation in terms of there being a sound guy. Like if there's a sound guy there and he's a good sound guy and I can get a specific mix in the ears, like, that's one of the big things is like if they can actually do a sound check where everybody's on stage and everyone's going to either play or sing or, get volume going so that they can actually try to sing in harmony, for example, so that they can see how well they can hear each other, when they're all actively singing and be able to, they'll just like, raise their hands. Okay, who needs more guitar? And then like everybody raises their hands and you start putting it into their monitors until, okay. And then who needs more vocal from him, and then you can get things adjusted real quick. As long as you have the time to do things like that and get things configured that way, then I would say in-ear monitors every time kills it. It'd be awesome because they're also super light. So I don't have to carry the monitors in anymore. But, you probably still have wedges out there anyway, just for, for some things. But I love the fact that the in-ears do make it, if they have them well mixed, they can make such a difference. And these sound like they have great technology.
If you are actually doing a monitor mix, because it's one thing to mix for this stage and the speakers out there. It's another thing to mix for the monitoring for each musician.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of the sound guys that I would work with would basically have, anywhere from, 2 or 3 to 5 or 6 different monitor mixes running because it would be the different wedges. So like each person who's out front, you have a bass player over there, a guitar player over there, and a lead singer in the middle. Each one has their own mix coming into their monitor so that, they can hear what they need to hear. Like, do you want to be the loudest thing in your mix or do you want him to be the loudest thing in your mix? Like people might have different preferences based on what their role is.
That's why it's awesome to have a board with snapshots. Like if you can snapshot all that, next gig, boom, you bring up the bassist's monitoring and send it to them.
It's a good starting point, but every room's going to be different is the one thing about that, because that's why a lot of times it's better to even start from scratch, because in this room you're playing out from the corner and in that room it's tight and a long room. So it's bouncing down and coming back and you might get completely different characteristics out of everything, even on just on stage. just based on the
once you've
layout of the
got
room.
that room, if you have to go back to that room in the
Yes,
future,
the room.
voila.
Yes. Mhm. And that's the way he does it. Is he has the scenes saved more by both the band setup, so you have the right channels for the right things, but also at roughly the right levels for the way they played last time. So, and it can depend on that. They could be louder in the amp or louder on their instruments than they used to be, but for the most part, people they have their stage volume. They know what they're doing. They get themselves into their spot, and then it's if it was the same as last time, it should be easy to just jump
Have
right in.
you
and
ever
start playing.
gotten to play with these spatial monitors?
We'll have to see another spatial
Yeah.
ones now. I haven't done much with the in-ear monitors. I basically just use the studio monitors like these for when I'm here, and when I'm out, I'm usually just doing more light stuff and roadie stuff while I'm watching the sound guys work. So like they're the ones mixing on the iPads, and a lot of times they're not even using headphones at all either. They're walking around the venue with their iPad, so they're mixing on the iPad, but they're walking over to see what it sounds like in that corner and seeing what it sounds like in the very back and seeing what it sounds like up on the front corner. So they're moving around to test how it sounds in the room rather than relying on something in their ears.
Well, this one has 3D Me technology. ASI Audio's 3D Me.
Mhm.
Amazing in-ear monitor system with ambient sound control. And this ambient sound control, like this is a big thing right now. The Atmos that iTunes is now insisting you have to mix
Right.
for Atmos now. This is another level of that kind of 3D sound that we're going into.
Yeah, nice. 8-dimensional sound.
And this is tested by real musicians.
Very cool. Let's see. Ambient sound control.
Oh my God! What?
You can hear us now, right?
Yes.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
God, what is this magical thing?
Hey guys, in today's video, we're checking out a really incredible and very unique in-ear monitor system. We're checking out these guys right here, and if you can see, these actually have like a little ambient microphone built into them. So what happens is you actually have a way to control how much ambient sound you want let into your ears. So you still get your in-ear monitor mix, but you don't feel as isolated. And you can control how much you get with this little controller right here. Really unique. I've never actually seen anything like this with in-ear monitors. Very cool system. This is the 3DME by a company called ASI Audio, which is by Sensophonics, if you've heard of them. Really crazy, and one of the most common complaints about in-ear monitors, actually probably the biggest common complaint about in-ear monitors, is how isolated you feel. You're very isolated from the audience, you don't really hear what's going on around you. You have to take out one earbud in order to talk to someone on stage and stuff like that. This system has basically solved that problem because it is letting in some of the sound, and you have control of how much of the ambient environment you want to hear in your in-ear monitors. On top of that, you get more advanced features with the app. You have like EQ control, you have a limiter, you have different settings that you can do with the app. You can change the left and the right earbud. You can set the limiter differently on each earbud. Really wild, really cool system, and I'm going to go over it to see if it's something that you can be interested in. So many thanks to ASI Audio for sending this over to check out for the channel. This is not a paid video or anything. They just sent it over to me to check out. I love it, so I'm putting it on my channel. If I didn't like the product, I wouldn't review it on my channel. If you've ever felt like, man, I feel really isolated when I use in-ear monitors, this is definitely something worth looking into. I've been using it at the last couple of shows that I've played. I also had some of my musician friends try it out, and I filmed their reaction to it. We're gonna check this thing out and see if this is something that is right for you. Before we get started, this is a music tech channel. I do gear reviews, tutorials, I do gear giveaways on this channel. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, don't forget to subscribe. All right, so let's go ahead and check this thing out. Okay, so here's the case that it comes in, a really nice carrying case. We're bringing it around everywhere. So you get a couple of things. So here's the main unit itself. You get the earbuds. It comes with a USB-C cable for charging the device. Comes with a clip if you need to clip something onto like a shirt or something like that. It comes with a device for cleaning the earbuds. Comes with some tips. And also comes with this cable, and I'll show you how you use that here in a minute. So you're gonna plug the headphones into this port right here. It's got this double port because you do have different control over the left and the right side, which I'll show you here in a minute. Very specific specific cable, but you see this right here. Plug that into the side. On the bottom here, you flip the switch on and it's ready to go. And you can see at the top, you get like a little battery meter as well with these 4 green dots, which is really nice. So over here, you can see you have a port that says in right here on the side. This is where you're going to plug in the signal. So you're going to be getting this from, you know, an in-ear monitor system or wherever you're getting the signal from. So that's what this cable's for. So I'm going to attach this to my wireless in-ear monitor receiver right here. I'm using the Audio-Technica one. Okay, so I know at this point you're probably like, I don't want to wear 2 belt packs. That was my first thought when I first saw this as well. I was like, oh, this is going to be weird. Honestly, it's not weird at all. I've done it for multiple shows. That first show, it was just like, oh, well, that's not bad at all. It's just like on my right side, you know, where I have my belt pack, that's where I can control the ambient mics. And then on my left side, that's where I can control the volume. I just want to address that right off the bat. As soon as the first show started, I was like, oh, this isn't bad at all. Wanted to be clear about that because I had the same thought. Anyway, back to the video. So it looks like this. So you do have 2 different packs. This one is still going to control the volume. So my Audio-Technica one is still going to control the volume. By the way, this Audio-Technica one is a fantastic in-ear monitor system. I feel like not very many people know about it. I do have a dedicated video on it. Check out my video on that. I'll link to that down below. But that Audio-Technica system still controls the volume. And then this one on the top, you have this plus and the minus button. That is going to be what controls how much of the ambient comes into your ears. So if you want less of the ambient mics coming into your ears, push the minus button. If you want more of the ambient mics coming in so you hear more of the environment around you, you push the plus button. You do get a little bit more control, and I'll show you that in the app, but that's in general how it works. Pretty easy to set up. And of course, it charges over USB-C and it has a built-in battery. Okay, so there is an app that comes with it, available for Apple or Android, and you have 3 different menus here. You have main, equalizer, and options. So on this main screen right here, this is where you can control the mic level, how much of the ambient sound do you want to be let in. So right now it's set to unity gain, which will let in quite a bit of sound. But, you know, I could lower it down to like -15. I can turn it off and just be completely isolated. I can set it all the way up to +12, which you don't really want to do. That's a lot and it'll add too much to it. I personally find not going above 0 is usually best. You do have a limiter over here on the side, so you can set up a limiter, which is always nice as well. Going over, you have an equalizer, so if you want a little bit more bass, a little less treble, you can set that up here, which is great. You do have a switch as well to set it just back to flat and set it to EQ mode as well. And then over here at options, you have a couple of more advanced setups. So step mode versus set mode up here. This is actually really cool. So if you have it in step mode, when you push up and down on the body pack itself, it's just going to add a little bit more of the ambient mics into your in-ears. So pushing up will bring in more sound, pushing down will bring in less sound. However, you do have an option here as well if you set it to set mode, and what you can do is have the plus button go to a certain setting and the minus button go to another setting. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to set the mic level to 0 at unity, and when I push the plus button, I want it to go to unity. So I'm going to push a set plus button. Now every time that I push the plus button, it will go to 0. Now when I push the negative button, I want it to drop all the way down to -15. So now I'm going to push this set minus button, and now it's set to -15. So set mode means when I push plus button, it goes to 0. Minus will go to -15. I personally find myself liking to use step mode. That's the one that I like myself. Startup squeal suppressor I leave on, so when it turns on, it'll just basically mute everything, or at least have it at a very limited level. And then when you push either the plus or minus button, it'll go back to normal. So that's great. You don't get any pops or something in your ear when you turn it on. You can also monitor processing bypass if you want to turn off the EQ and the ambient mics and stuff like that. And also you have 2 different ear styles, which I'll address here in a little bit when I go over the options, but you can set that here as well. So also on multiple menus, so let's go back to the main button. See this separate/join button right here? If I set it to separate, I can do left and right earpieces different. So I can set the ambient mic a little bit higher in the right, but a little bit lower in the left. That can be helpful if you stand like right by the drummer and you don't want all that drum coming in on the left side, but you still want to hear the ambience coming in on the right side. Pretty interesting. You can also change, you know, the limiter on the left versus the right as well. Same thing with EQ. You can also do that. You can separate the EQ in the left and in the right. Pretty wild. It's just really cool that you can do that separately. Also, when you first first load it up, you should do this. There's a seal test by pushing this ear button up here, and it'll alternate between a low frequency and a higher frequency, and you should be able to hear that the levels, the volume are the same, and that'll let you know if you have a good seal in your ears. Up here, you can save presets and reload presets, and it'll reload everything to where I saved it. Pretty cool. The only thing that I wish that this thing did is that when I push the button on the controller itself, I wish it would show me where the mic level is at. You can see that it doesn't adjust it, in the app itself. I do wish that when I push the buttons that it would give me a live reading of where the mic level is set at currently. Hopefully that'll happen in a future firmware update or something like that. But really cool, pretty easy to use. All of it definitely makes sense. As far as specs, the two most important ones for me is that the frequency response is from 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz, so the full frequency response, which is great. The operation time is 8 hours, and it takes 5 hours to charge if the battery is fully depleted. If there's anything else you want to see as far as specs, go ahead and pause the screen now. As far as price, to get the 3D ME with dual driver universal tip earbuds, it's going to be $799, and it will have purchase links down below to purchase these if you want to check them out for yourself. They do have options for custom molds, so they have a dual driver and a quad driver. So the dual driver is $2,000 and the quad driver is $2,500. I highly recommend custom molds. I absolutely love them. I did do a video documenting me and my wife going to get custom in-ear monitor molds. If you're interested in the process, check out my video on that. So obviously you have to go to your audiologist, get those custom molds and send it to them. Those are definitely an option for you as well. And I'll be sure to link down below to everything that you need if you want to check the system out for yourself. They do also have a sleeve. If you get the universal fit and want to upgrade later, you do have that as an option as well. Okay, so like I said, I've been using this in the last couple of shows that I've been doing. So the first one was more like a corporate gig, not a huge, energetic show or anything like that. It was so weird when you first do it. It's almost crazy because I've been using in-ears for 5-6 years, and you're isolated most of the time. It's so wild to actually hear what's going on. You feel like, are my ears not fit right? It almost sounds like an earbud is out or something like that. It's not. It's just wild. You can still hear your mix, but you can still hear the room around you. It's really crazy. I remember, our singer came over to tell me something like, hey, can you turn up the tracks for this song? And he came over, and I didn't have to do the take an in-ear out and him tell me what's going on and then put an in-ear in. Just came over and said, hey, can you turn up the tracks? And I was able to do that. It's such a wild feeling. It was great to experience it, but I'll be honest, that gig kind of sucked. So it wasn't like anything like super exciting. However, so I brought it to the next gig that we did. There's this venue that we play in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's called Warehouse 2565. It's always a blast. Every time we play there, it's such a good show. So I was really excited to bring these to that place because the audience is always really receptive at that show. There's such a great crowd. And being able to go to that show where people are really responding well to our music and stuff like that, and just being able to hear the crowd when you would do stuff was really cool. In one of the songs we do, we mash up with Rap God by Eminem. So I do that really fast part in that song. And being able to hear the crowd cheer during that part, it was so much louder than you can ever hear with any other isolating earbuds. It was really wild.
So when I'm even what I gotta do to get to the real, I'm superhuman and a bit of a man, what was the thing you say is ricocheting off of me, the glue you are never seen it more than demonstrating how you don't motherfucking audience of human, that I can't even fit in, I know the haters are forever waiting for the news, they say I'm doing celebrating, cause I'm in the way to get a motivated, I make elevator music, give me elevator music.
We do Inner Sandman, when I got to do the guitar solo, to hear the crowd cheering during that part. It's all just really cool. So, I have to be able to hear my in-ears in order to stay on the click track. But being able to have the crowd as well as my mix, it's really wild. It's such a unique experience. Also, I just did a gig this weekend, another place we play in Parker, Colorado, called the Wild Goose Saloon. That one is always fun as well. You can actually hear the crowd, cheer when you did the Rap God part or a solo or something like that. It's such a different experience to really be able to hear the crowd and still be able to hear your in-ear monitor mix. It's really cool. So there's no way that I'm going to be able to show you guys how this sounds. I don't know how I would be able to record that and send that and put that in the video. So like I said, my first reaction, I was just like, I wasn't as clean as the YouTube algorithm is going to want me to be, but I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is so weird. I wish that I would have filmed that. I should have filmed my reaction trying these out for the first time, but I didn't know it would be that cool. So what I did is I filmed some of my musician friends trying this out, and I filmed their initial reaction because they hadn't heard this before. I didn't really tell them anything about it. I just wanted to show it to them and film their reaction to it. So here's some of their reactions.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Wow, I can hear myself too.
Yeah. Well, I probably brought it up too high, but see how you can still hear the music, but hear everything that's going on around?
Oh my god, dude.
So now let me bring it back down. So now you're like isolated.
I can kind of hear you.
Yeah. But it's pretty isolated, right?
Yeah.
And now
Are you just talking normal? Or are you talking loud?
I'm just talking normal, and now here, yeah. Can you see how much?
Shit.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
So
Am I talking loud? Oh my
No,
god.
no. Because yeah, if you take it up too high, then yeah, it feels like
God,
you.
dude, I feel like I took something. This is amazing.
Isn't that cool?
So we can have a full-on conversation.
Yeah, and you can still listen to your music. So, or like on stage, like people
Oh
can
my
talk
god,
to you.
what is this magical thing?
Yeah. Can you hear me right now? Rick, can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Rick? Can you hear us?
No, obviously
No, you
not.
can't.
But then when I do this,
Can you hear us?
now can you hear us?
Rick said
Can you hear us?
Rick said dick. Can you hear us?
Oh my god. What?
You can hear us now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just put it where you want.
Which
Up.
way?
Up gives you more.
Who makes
Yep.
that?
Up gives you more. ASI audio.
Say that again, Tony.
Who makes that?
ASI audio.
You're a smooth Tennessee whiskey.
That's super fucking weird.
I know.
Can you hear this? Can't hear it?
Interesting. I hear it.
So just FYI, when I did this, I took it to the extremes. I pushed the minus all the way to the bottom, and I pushed the plus all the way to the top. So at basically off for the ambient mics, and then plus 12. You don't want to go to plus 12, because then, especially when you talk, you're going to get you're going to hear that more. So when you're talking or singing, it's sending more sound into you. So that's why, like with Tiffany, she was like, why is everything so loud right now? Because I had it at 12. So don't set it there. I don't know of a situation where you really want to go above 0. So just something to keep in mind. I think something that really speaks about how cool this system is that there's another video, another review on YouTube by Pete Thorne. If you haven't seen him, great YouTuber. I'm sure you have. It's something that's cool about his video is that he mentions that he's not really a fan of in-ear monitors. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. You should watch his video on it. But he kind of came from the place of, oh, sometimes I have to do a tour and they say you have to use in-ear monitors. I'm just like, okay, sure, I'll do that. That's where he's coming from. He's not really a fan of it. Again, watch his video to have him explain it. I, however, am coming from the world of in-ear monitors are probably the best investment a musician can make. That's truly what I believe. It's not for everyone. There's exceptions for everything, but in-ear monitors are one of the best things that I've ever invested in as a musician. I absolutely love them, and I definitely encourage most musicians to get them. Both of us are like, wow, these are really cool. So even someone who's not a fan of in-ear monitors loves these, and me, as someone who is a massive fan of in-ear monitors, I also love these. I think that definitely speaks volumes of how cool this system is. So that's basically it. If you guys found this video helpful, please do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It does a ton to help out the channel, and I would seriously appreciate it. Purchase links to purchase this will be down below in the description if this is something that you want to check out for yourself. Using those links is also a free way to support the channel at no extra cost to you. Again, many thanks to ASI Audio for sending this over to check out for the channel. So be sure to check out my video on the Audio Technica in-ear monitor system. That's one of my favorite in-ear monitor systems that I use. It's a hidden gem. I really think more people need to know about it. So check that out, and also check out my video on getting custom molds if you're not familiar with the process of getting custom in-ear monitor ear molds. You can check out both of those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Scott Yule Music. I post a lot about my shows on my stories, specifically on Instagram, so be sure to follow me on there. Thank you guys again for watching. Leave a comment down below if you have any other cool gear you want me to check out. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Gear Wars.
And that's the right kind of gear too.
Oh, that's a gear channel that I love. Scott O.
Very cool.
Scott O Music at Scott O Music.
Very cool.
those custom ear molds, that's what got my attention, because the reason why I hate the earbuds is they hurt my ears. I feel like I'm,
Then they are not appropriately fit.
yeah, I've never had one that didn't hurt my ears wearing them for more than an hour.
Right, right. Yeah, I had at one point there's headphones for my phone that it was the collar, like the battery was in the collar, and then there's just little part that went up in your ear, and those were comfortable just because they were like a small, like the size of a grape, and it was just like you just went right in and it was fine. But some of the ones like these, like they're trying to isolate again. That the idea is to isolate the outside noise, so you want it to more or less block everything else out. So the better it fits, um, the better it is, the better it'll sound. But also, and nothing should hurt. Like so that was definitely not an appropriate fit for you if you were having pain with any of that sort of stuff. So you'd want to make sure that you get like the different. They usually send a couple of different, even if it's just the generic earbuds. They would usually send a couple of different choices, like a larger one, a smaller one, whatever. You try a couple of different ones to see which one fits. I've even seen people that put things in like the wrong way. Like they had Apple buds, but instead of having like the thing coming out the bottom, they had it like flipped upside down and like backwards. It was like
Isn't there a
stuffed in.
left and a right? Like,
There's a left and a right, but they also it was just literally flipped like completely the wrong way, and I was like, that's just, it doesn't look comfortable, one, and it doesn't look like it's going to stay there too. And I'm like, I don't know. I was just like, I don't know about that, but you got to do what works for your ears, and that's where the custom mold would come in.
What did you think of that system of bringing the ambient sound in? So,
Oh, I love it for sure. That's the one that reminded me of the app. Kind of reminded me of like the Wheel of Me is something that's that they have for monitoring systems, where you can just dial in, like if you're monitoring your guitar and your microphone, you have those levels set in this app, and then you can just bring everybody else in the room down, for example. And if you bring them all down and you're still not loud enough, you can bring them down more, and that'll bring you boosted up, or the other way around. Also, you can if you can't hear everyone, you can bring them up, and you get a nice easy way of just being able to dial up more of what you're doing or less of that compared to what everyone else is doing.
And that's the key to getting a good recording, is hearing what you need to hear at the right levels. If you over monitor and you hear more of what you're trying to sing to, you're going to do like what she did when he turned it up to 12 and she started talking real loud, because what she was hearing was loud. So it's the Sony Walkman effect, where you're turned all the way up and you're screaming at the people around you because you're hearing things too loud.
Or could it be the other way, where the volume up at 12 is taking her voice and making it so loud that she's actually talking like this, because it sounds so loud in her head that she had to actually quiet down. And when she's talking loud is when they had it on full isolation, where you can't hear anything in the room. It's like, oh, I can't hear myself at all.
The best monitor mix should allow you to do what you're supposed to do without overemphasis or underemphasis. If you're monitoring properly, then you're singing properly. Otherwise, you're pushing too hard because you're not hearing it loud enough, or you're hearing it too loud.
Yeah, I pretty much bet that any of the guys that I've worked with who use the in-ear monitors would love something like this compared to the ones that they're using, because the ones that they're using, a lot of them either, like I forever see like one hanging on the shoulder, because they're always going to have one out so they can hear what's going on stage on that side. In some cases, in other cases, it could be maybe they're deaf in that ear and they have no use of having a monitor in on that ear. That's another reason why it could be out. But it's all a question of like you almost never see them have both in, and then have the ability to because just again being able to have somebody kind of lean over and say something to you without having to reach up and pull something out of your ear is very helpful, because you're usually busy playing, and while you guys are playing, someone's going to come over and say, hey, we're going to do whatever song next, and you want to be
able to compensate the ears differently. That situation being next to the drummer, you might adjust this one differently.
Oh, for sure. I would put a limiter for sure on the side with the drummer. I would set the limiter and set it low, so that all the sound, like everything else is the same, but I'm just limiting everything to a little quieter than usual, so that it's going to keep everything chopped off.
On stage, I would want that. I would almost want to insist on something like that.
Yeah, but that's not the kind of thing that someone's just going to give you you go to a random gig at a bar and you're like, sound guy, I want my in-ear monitor
Well,
set up.
I was looking and he brought up the page for a second, and this is a link from their YouTube, and yeah, $7.99. It's a little more than most of the other monitoring systems, but at the same time, none of them offer this kind of feature.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is, in a lot of cases, the ones who would be most attracted to this are people who had already, sunk some money into monitors in the past and see the benefit of this over the ones they've been using. But at the same time, this would be, it would make anyone better musicians. I've seen YouTube, articles on that as well about how in-ear monitors like this would be able to make basically anyone be able to be a better musician with other people because of the way you can try to mix things better.
And maybe it will get cheaper over time as the concept and the technology, like this is kind of innovative, groundbreaking. It's a one of its kind of feature in this arena.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite of what when they're doing things like noise canceling headphones. I mean, at the same time, they're monitoring the surrounding sound, but they're doing it in order to cancel it out. In this case, you're monitoring the outside sound to just let certain amounts of it in, which is, as you say, something that I haven't seen much of in anything else,
and useful in those performing scenarios.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it all the time being useful. Yeah,
Scott Yule music.
Yeah,
awesome
Very
gear
cool.
site.
Mm-hmm.
So now a little bit of mixing. Something that me and Mavi were looking at for the last couple of weeks, and we're seeing this term of bottom up, top down mixing, and the way different engineers approach their mixing flow. And it's a debated arena. Like there are those who are like, this is the way, and those who are like, no, this is the way. And I've tried both. I do a hybrid usually where there's some things you got to take a top-down approach, and there's other things that like you start with silence and you figure out how much of it you want to hear.
Yeah. And again, it's situational, as you say, sometimes you want this, sometimes you want that. And again, sometimes people will just have a preference for one or the other as a starting point because it gets them to where they want to get to faster in their workflow.
Yeah, this one's coming from At Home Studio Corner, Joe Glider. Awesome voice. He's got like a Glenn level kind of voice. It's pleasing and easy to learn from.
Good combination.
Yeah, homestudiocorner.com. He's got a mothership.
Nice. And this one's about where top-down mixing goes wrong.
Is there a downside to it? Are there situations where it doesn't work? For some people, it's a game changer. Like Cellar Studio Productions, for example. Pulled up an old mix from 2021, spent an hour on it doing top-down mixing, and the mix came out clearer and better than the original mix that took countless hours to mix. This is a huge deal. Or Audio Mix Expert. Started top-down mixing about a year ago. Totally changed my whole approach to the way I mix. It's honestly surprising how well the mix comes together with such a small amount of processing. But for some people, top-down mixing is the devil. Captivate Beats says it is the worst possible workflow for electronic music production. Or Tommy Washoe, who said simply, top-down doesn't work for heavy metal. Also heavy metal. We'll circle back to that later in the video. In case you missed it, in last week's video, I talked about top-down mixing, why I think it's the GOAT. If you haven't watched that or just need a refresher, I'll link to it in the description. Top-down mixing is simply thinking through and processing tracks on a bus level before moving down to the individual track level. But there are potential downsides. First, it can lead to overprocessing on the bus. For example, M11N did not like my drum bus example in the video where I showed pretty heavy compression on the entire drum bus without touching any of the individual tracks. M11N says that it caused an unnatural pumping effect in the high frequencies in the example. Let me play for you what he's talking about. Now, there absolutely is pumping there. The pumping is when the kick drum hits, boom, and it makes the cymbals go, psh, that kind of pulled down cymbal sound. Some people don't like pumping, but a lot of people, myself included, do. To my ear, that little bit of pumping that can happen when you add compression over your drum bus or even over the entire mix is actually desirable and is a little bit the sound of rock and roll music. Feel free to disagree, but I kind of like it. That said, you can absolutely go too far with it, and overprocessing is certainly a danger with top-down mixing. Overprocessing isn't bad in and of itself. Sometimes you overprocess to get the sound that you want, but going too far, of course, can be a bad thing. Second potential problem with top-down mixing is it can lead to relying too heavily on the buses versus the tracks themselves, where you end up trying to apply a bus solution to a track problem. For example, let's say I've got 5 guitar tracks. I've got them routed to my guitar bus. One of those tracks is super muddy. Maybe I had a fuzz pedal on, and while it sounds cool, it's got too much mud. It's making things sound muddy. If you're not careful, some people will try to solve that mud problem on the bus level. That doesn't make sense. If it's only the one track that's muddy, it makes sense to go to that track and EQ out that mud. If I do that same EQ on the bus level, it might fix that one muddy track, but what else happens? All the other guitars end up sounding thin because they're going through an EQ that they don't need. So does that mean that top-down mixing is garbage and we should throw it out? Or should we follow Country Mouse City Crime's advice, which is to mix backwards, forwards, or side to side? Doesn't matter, just do it until it sounds good. This is terrible advice. I'll explain why in a minute. Yes, there are certainly potential problems with top-down mixing, but those aren't the real problem. The real problem with top-down mixing is people don't take the time to understand it. It's called top-down mixing, top-down, but people act like it's top-only mixing. They throw the baby out with the bathwater and assume that top-down mixing means you only put plugins on the buses and not on the individual channels. That's ridiculous. That's like if I told you I really like subtractive EQ, where the thought process is I'm going to remove unwanted frequencies before I go and boost any other frequencies. And then your response was, what, you're telling me I can't boost nothing? Top-down mixing is a philosophy. It's an approach to mixing that forces you to listen to the mix from the larger context of the buses. Why? Because most people tend to dive too deeply into the individual tracks. How do I know this? Because I've spent the last 15 years helping thousands of people both here on YouTube and inside my paid programs, and I've seen the effects that top-down mixing has on people's mixes. It's transformative. Can we screw it up? Of course we can. That's human nature. We're really good at screwing things up. But don't throw out the philosophy too quickly. It might be you that's the problem, not top-down mixing. Okay, but what about the idea that you can't use top-down mixing for things like electronic music production or even heavy metal? Well, that's ridiculous, of course. Top-down mixing is just about how you think about how you approach and how you route things in your mix. If I need to work on a heavy metal song and I need to really EQ and compress that kick drum to get that sound that I'm looking for in that song, I'm going to do that on the kick drum level. I might not do much, if any, processing on the bus. I might do it all on the individual track level. That's still top-down mixing. I'm still thinking about it from the top level, doing things there that make sense, and then zooming into the individual level to do things there that make sense. Let's go back to our old friend Country Mouse City Crimes, who said, just mix it until it sounds good. On the surface, this seems like good advice. Yeah, just do what sounds good. But it's terrible advice. Here's what I wrote back. It's terrible advice to someone who's trying to learn how to do this stuff. A beginner, by definition, doesn't know what sounds good. So my mission for the last 15 years has been to help them develop that skill set. That involves teaching processes that help develop critical listening. One of those processes is top-down mixing. It's far more helpful than simply telling someone to do what sounds good. That's like if you came to me for woodworking advice and I said, get a piece of wood and a knife and then don't stop until it looks amazing. That's just not helpful. Here's a good way to think about top-down mixing. It's about zooming in and zooming out. Most people, when they're working on a mix, they zoom into the individual channels and they zoom out to the entire mix. What top-down mixing does is introduces this middle layer called the buses layer, where instead of zooming all the way out to the entire mix or all the way into the snare drum, I can zoom out to the drum mix itself. It's another dimension to the mix, and I can do some things to that drum mix that makes the entire thing better versus having to do things to individual channels. I still zoom in and do things to individual channels when that makes sense, but there are some things that I can do on a more global global level that have a bigger impact and take less time. It's not all or nothing. It's not top only. It's top down. Let's focus on the top first, and then let's go down to the individual channels as needed. And one more thing, top-down mixing isn't the be-all, end-all. It's really only a piece of my overall mixing philosophy. It's step 4 of my 5-step mix process. If you skip steps 1 through 3, you're doomed. I can teach you the whole process for free. Just go to 5stepmix.com. If you haven't seen last week's video on why top-down mixing is the GOAT, you can watch that here, or to watch some of my best mixing videos, go here. Thanks for watching. See ya.
Oh, thanks for letting us watch.
Very cool.
Oh, yes, Joe, you kick ass with the mixing advice. Well, I was thinking when I used to do program development and how we would build the program, it's a lot like the top-down mixing approach. You get the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly.
You take care of the low-hanging fruit first, and then deal with the things that take more work or attention, like drilling to a track to address a muddy problem because it's on the track that you need to fix it. That is the key to like setting up your environment at the top, getting your glue, your effects, everything that is part of mixing done up there, and then only drill into the tracks where it's necessary.
A lot of people, when they're getting started with a new DAW or a new workflow or a new setup, they get, they have so many options, so many things they can put on the track, so they end up putting too many on each individual track. And I think the benefit, especially of the approach he's talking about, is not losing the big picture, like starting from the big picture. This is where we want to get. Big picture, and looking at the bus level of, for all the vocals, we're going to try to do this general idea and we can tweak from there. For all of the drum stuff, we're going to do this over here. Having those as categories and understanding that you're going to do things in a whole category sense, in addition to fixing individual things on the track level. But I'm also a big fan of trying to do as little as possible on a track level in the first place. Like I want to get a good signal in. So the level is super important. Get a strong signal coming in. And then once you've got that, and if you have a quality instrument or a quality signal coming from whatever you're getting, then that's a good starting point.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out. So you got to start with something that's a good quality thing to begin with. But I also don't want to throw a whole bunch of, tinsel and whatever on that. Like just start with the track and just, what does the track sound like as it is? Mix everything as it is, and it might sound a lot better than you would think. Where if you started by going, okay, here's the guitar track, and I'm going to add this and add this and add this, and you start throwing everything on each individual track, you can end up with something that sounds very messy very quickly because you're so focused on each individual track rather than listening to what the whole project sounds like.
Well, and he made it a point to say that, like, putting an effect on a track, it's not unheard of. Like, there are certain effects, EQ and things that I might want to do at the track level. It's about knowing which effects belong in a bus and which effects are okay to use on tracks. A reverb is not something that I'm going to apply usually at the track level unless I'm looking for a very special reverb for that one track, and usually reverbs will go on a bus track. But on a track effect, EQ and compression, you might do that to demud or tweak out a signal.
One thing, it's almost like cheating with the Personas board that we have out there, the Studio Live. When we're actually recording things, I can just go to each channel, like, okay, this is your vocal track. So I can just go and load a preset of, male vocal 1 that's already just built in to the board. And that already sets up everything. It's, a compressor, a limiter, like anything that would normally be on a track that you want to have a male vocal come in on. And there's 3 of them. So that'll be for 3 different, voice profiles, 3 male, 3 female.
Now, if I've got 3 vocal tracks, and I've got a effect that I want to use on those 3 vocal tracks, that belongs in a bus.
Right, that's a bus thing for sure. In this case, what I'm talking about is just when we're just recording, or we have something that we just recorded in the room, it suddenly sounds 10 times better really quick, because you can just go in and say, okay, this was a bass, this channel was a bass, this channel was a keyboard, this channel was a snare drum, this channel was a kick drum. Like, just by bringing up that profile for each of those tracks immediately gets you a really solid starting point, where all you need to do now is just get a little bit of a level tweak on each one of those, and then whatever you're doing sounds amazing, because of the fact that it already did the very basic stuff of just, if something of that sort, like if an instrument, a guitar track, or you're doing a bright piano track, let's say. So it sets up the EQ to be just, this certain way for a bright piano, as well as doing a compressor, or this, again, the whole channel strip basically set up. And it's just a real quick way to get a good starting point, and then you tweak from there.
Yes.
Good
Bus
stuff.
mixing is fun once you get into it. I've been sold on it for years. I love Joe Glider's advice and channel. Like, he is a bus mixing advocate.
What do you mean I can't boost nothing?
I like his attitude. You gotta boost that. Now we're gonna get physical. This talks about, like, the physical approach you take does affect the music you make, and the style, especially if you're playing piano. This one I was interested in because that's where I come from, but I do think some of this might apply to other instruments where there is the same situation.
Yeah, and a lot of it, again, comes down to individual physiology. Like, what's comfortable for you might not be comfortable for me. So it has to do with what's comfortable and what works for you. But there are certain guidelines to follow, so that you don't injure yourself, and that, if you're feeling pain in doing something, you're gonna stop doing it that way and figure out a way that works for you. Because everybody's got their own quirks of how their bodies would react to certain situations. Like, if you're trying to play piano and you're playing too close to yourself, like your hands are too tight in here, you're going to start developing pain and discomfort after playing for a few minutes, when if you played with your forearms straight and flat as best you can. And again, we're going to get into how much rotation, like pinkies out versus pinkies in kind of rotation. I'm thinking you're talking not flat, or not out this way and in that way.
Actually
rotation. Because again, some of it is that, some of it is the the moving in circles as you're going up the keyboard with arpeggios and things of that nature when you're trying to play fast.
If you feel something snap, you went too hard.
Yeah, should not do that again. That's for sure.
So this was a new piano channel for me. I love collecting these up at Tone Based Piano, and I mean, for our classical night, I will be visiting here for several.
Yeah, several good ones right there, for sure.
And this really, the advice you hear here comes from a lot of musical giants in the industry. It's a lot of good advice on form and technique.
Excellent. And we'll see about how rotation immediately changes your playing.
Went to play for Dorothy Taubman. I thought she was a witch when she said, "Do you have backaches?" And I said, "Yes, I've always had them, but what does it have to do with piano playing?" She said, "The back muscles tighten up to keep you from falling off the piano." It's amazing to know that what we do here can hurt all the way to the back and all the way down the back and the shoulders.
So one of my big goals this year is to expand my repertoire a bit, to fill in some of the gaps of pieces that I haven't played yet. One of the pieces I picked up is Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. I was working on the third movement and having a pretty hard time with it when I remembered an extremely important principle that I had somehow not been incorporating. After decades of playing the piano, hearing it from teacher after teacher, seeing other pianists using it, advising it to my own students, I still needed to be reminded of this. Rotation. Most pianists, no matter at what level you are, have heard this term. But what exactly is rotation? And why is it so important for piano playing? What's the part of our body that's doing the rotating anyway?
The leg rotates in both directions. The arm rotates in both directions. Every finger rotates in both directions. The head rotates in both None of that has to do with rotation.
It is primarily, though, a forearm rotation. It is not a wrist rotation. Some people talk about wrist rotation, but we cannot rotate from the wrist. The hand can't rotate without the forearm. So it's really basically a forearm rotation that we're thinking about.
Before we continue though, I would encourage you all to rotate your fingers right down to the subscribe button. We are on our way to reaching 200,000 subscribers and we need your help. So take a second and subscribe. The concept of rotation as a fundamental technique in piano playing was first written about by the British pedagogue Tobias Mate. The idea of rotation then became a fundamental principle in the work of Dorothy Taubman, whose teachings have become a really core part of many pianists' education. Over on Tonebase Premium, there is a huge catalog of work on Taubman's teachings, including lessons by Edna Golandsky and Robert Durso, in which they really break down what the Dorothy Taubman technique entails and how it can really help you become a better pianist. This information is really helpful at finding ease and greater musicality, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned professional. As always, be sure to check the link in the bio below to sign up and find out more about Tonebase and the entire catalog of amazing piano content. I'm Robert Fleitz from Tonebase, and today we're going to hear from several Tonebase artists on why rotation is important, what it even is, and how it can help you express your musical ideas with more ease and conviction. So let's go!
It's useful just to think for a little bit about what happens in the arm when we do rotation. The forearm has two bones. There's the ulna, which stays fairly static, and then there's the radius, which rotates around the ulna. So it does this movement.
And rotating at the piano consists of being in this position and rolling back to this position.
Really, the most comfortable and most natural position for the arm is the one that we're in when we're walking down the street.
See, you're at rest like this. You know, for example, the Pope blesses the people like this, never like this. So this is where the bones are parallel, see?
I always keep returning to this position because that relaxes the arm and it stops you from building up tension, which then it's difficult to release from.
And if you all want to learn how to rotate immediately, this is what you do. Pretend that you're putting a key in the door and turn the key. See? You're rotating.
One of the things that we encourage people to do is to put their arm in front of their body like this and to turn the palm of their hand towards their heart and turn it towards the floor and to observe the back of your forearm and see what you see. And what's happening is that there's a stable bone inside the arm that goes to the elbow and another bone which is revolving around that stable bone. That's very important to understand that the elbow in this direction has a certain stability.
The upper arm is moved by slow and sluggish muscles, so it's incapable of moving quickly. And you can see, do it without playing the piano, and you see immediately that you tire very quickly. You move the forearm, and it feels light and very easy to move, much faster, but still not fast enough for the finger motions, and this is where rotation comes into it.
Rotation's important because it enables the playing mechanism to stay connected at every moment. In other words, if I say to you that it's important to be connected finger, hand, and arm when I put a key down, I can't suddenly disconnect the mechanism and have my finger reach for the next note and feel that the playing's going to feel very good. So what rotation does is it helps us move very effectively left and right. So if I turn my forearm, I can get to many places on the keyboard and I can do it very fast.
Now, I strongly recommend that if rotation is a problem for you, you practice quite a lot at just the interval of a fifth until that feels really loose and comfortable and you can do it for maybe quite a few bars without getting tired. We're going to play the fifth finger and just rest on it. Really feel that the forearm is completely loose and floppy. And then start to just tap the thumb. And then you can do two taps. And then three. And so on. And then you can start to add in the fifth. only then start to extend out to greater intervals. And if your hand is very, very small, for quite some time, just stick with the 5th or the 6th. And obviously, if it's much bigger, you can go to the 7th, the octave, or even the 9th, or even the 10th if your hand is very large.
What's very interesting to discuss is what is related in a way to legato. I was taught very young, and singing tone was really emphasized in my early training. So I had a notion of just kind of squeezing the piano for the legato tone. And when Taubman showed me that it was possible to play smoothly and legato without having to squeeze the notes for legato, it was very revolutionary for me. So I'm on the 5 and I'm going to 4. What's wonderful about the rotation is that the rotational movement is playing and giving 4 the support at the same time, simultaneously. It's helping release that 5th finger off of where it's been.
It moves the music from sounding static to actually being round and moving forward. Talking about shaping, there's rotation in there. What happens if we play the G and just stop there? It doesn't sound continuous, even if I sing on it. But when I shape, even when the note is long, I continue into the quicker notes in the same way as if it was not a quick note, with finger, hand, and forearm connected together with a free forearm, not a heavy forearm. The free forearm allows me to come in a way that will produce a sound and continue into here. Even without pedaling, it will continue.
I wanted to give you an idea of why it's so important that from the very beginning, the person understands that we say sometimes the inner part of the arm is playing and the outer part is releasing that finger. And people feel a certain balance and stability on those fingers they hadn't felt before.
We're not consciously thinking about how is my arm rotating, but once we've practiced the movement and feel that it's become absorbed into our way of playing, then we have developed rotational freedom. So whenever you see a passage in a piece of music, you'll be able to use that rotation and you won't even notice that you're doing it most of the time.
Thanks for joining us today on this whirlwind exploration of rotation. And remember, this is just the beginning. On the Tone-Based Premium platform, you can find the full version of all the lessons that were featured today, as well as many more courses about fundamental principles of piano technique that will help you at any level of your playing. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon. Be sure to check out the link in the bio below to sign up for Tone-Based Premium and to watch more of these lessons. And be sure to click that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate every one of you. See you next time.
Oh, me likey tone bass.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, right?
At Tone Based Piano on YouTube.
Indeed. Excellent.
And they
that-
were calling out to you, if you have large hands,
Yep, that's a
then
tenth
you
right
can
there.
play an octave.
An octave down here. You go octave plus 1 plus 2. C to an E. And then F. And I can just about stretch to the G, but like I can't really play C to G, but I can play C to F or C to E. So that's a tenth.
No, if you can go up 2 octaves in a row like that.
Yeah. The main thing is like you're trying to do arpeggios and like they usually do. And you like the rotation helps you get it smoother. And like what I was saying before, the kind of moving in a circle almost as you're going like one of those kind of things. You're going you're kind of moving your hand in getting closer to use the pinky, for example, or the ring finger, and then pulling back away when you're using the thumb and the first fingers.
Well, the one with the fifths that she was giving the example, the fifth bounce back and forth, that made me think minuet. Like, if you're writing a minuet, do that exercise.
Oh yeah, I mean, do that exercise anyway. Honestly, just again feeling it in the arms and feeling that the idea is that it's allowing you to play more comfortably so that when you're playing in general, you're using the right muscles so that you're not tiring easily. Because a lot of times you can tire out and even strain or stress out the muscles that you would normally play. Like if you wanted to play for 3 hours, but you play 30 minutes and then all of a sudden your hands are tired and you can't do it anymore. You build up that endurance over time, but things like this can help a lot because you're thinking about the muscles correctly, using a good technique that is requires less energy to do the job. So you're not over pushing to make it happen, and you're able to play more comfortably for longer.
Yeah. See, and one of my concerns lately has been I've been playing standing up with the way I have everything set up. Standing up
How
causes
flat
a
are your
different
wrists?
rotation.
Compared to you're not bent back, right?
I'm
Yeah.
my hands are not where they're it's not the ideal. I'm ready to like go back to the piano bench. I got a bench on the other side and the
Right.
desk is perfect height.
Mhm.
I need to get back to the proper sitting posture.
The main thing is
Standing
just
up
you
does
don't want to feel pain.
standing up not only starts to feel painful after a while, but it's a totally different style of playing for me.
One hack, actually, if you go back over there for a sec, one hack would be if you have something like a book or whatever that's like, say, 2 inches thick, and if you put it under the front corners of the keyboard so that the keyboard is angled a little bit away from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if I was actually using my keyboard stand, I have a killer keyboard stand that's right now doing nothing.
Right.
That I can actually adjust to the perfect height, whether I'm standing or sitting.
Right.
Ideally, I'd like to be able to switch. Sometimes I feel like sitting. I want to write for a couple of hours, and then sometimes I'm just like pounding out a part, and it's not a big deal to stand. I actually get a different kind of energy.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking though is like if you're so high that your wrist is back like this, what you could do is if you just by lifting the front of the keyboard, then your hands could get to a more natural, like you want to keep your forearms straight, like from your elbow to your middle finger, like straight down.
I'd like it. I'd like nice straight out like this.
Exactly.
When I used to do it on the baby grand and the bench was built for the piano, the height was perfect.
Exactly. And that's important to replicate. And again, whether it's the angle that you change of the keys themselves or whether it's the height to get it to the right place, the height should be close to the right range. But like if you want to go from standing to sitting and your chair is not quite the right, like the chair might be a little bit too low and the standing might be a little bit too high, by changing the angle of the keys a little bit, if the stand is capable of doing it, or if you have something you can shim it up with, then, you can get it to where you can actually, keep the wrists at a flat angle, which is
the good thing, I have an adjustable bench and the keyboard stand is adjustable as well. So I can get it to the sweet spot. I just have to gut this corner and move everything.
Whenever I think about an adjustable bench, I think about Tom and Jerry, and and Jerry just sending Tom up through the ceiling in the bench. He's trying to play. But let's not do that.
So at Tone Bass Piano, gonna be visiting this channel on a regular basis here.
Indeed. I think now we see Samurai.
Now we're gonna visit Japan because Spar Legacy has been turning me on to like Japanese approach, rock and roll, like nice blend. And I saw like the sensei is trying out Japanese music, which I always assumed he had.
Very cool. Checking out some different instruments and some different style.
Yeah, and he's one of the coolest guitarists on YouTube when it comes to especially weird guitars and shit. He's got a whole series on it that I'm a huge fan of.
Indeed. Samurai guitarist.
At Samurai Guitarist, he's going to try Japanese and play with some Japanese exclusive instruments.
Nice. And how much of it comes down to the exotic scale that's being used versus how much of it is the actual tone of the instruments?
In some cases, it's the twang, and in other cases, it's like you can play middle notes in the middle of notes on some of them.
Oh yeah, because they're fretless, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's check it out.
I'm here in Santa Cruz with Kyle Abbott, a Bachido official, and I'm going to learn about something I've always wanted to learn about, Japanese music and the Japanese instrument, the shamisen. So Kyle, can you give me just like a brief primer of the instruments and just the music in general?
I mean, the tricky thing about is the music is, it's just like, saying American music or Chinese music. There's all sorts of genres.
And so what would you be into in this like broader spectrum of Japanese music?
More in the folk line, what's called Tsugaru Shamisen. The origins of the Tsugaru style date back to like 1850s-ish. The main way the blind made money was either with massage or music. They would go out, play door to door for rice or money or such. Up until the 1960s and 70s, this music was not stuff that the parents would encourage the kids to play. It was kind of regarded as music that the blind, the riffraff would play. But in the 1960s and 70s, Japan went through kind of a nationalistic revival, or they want to really push some cultural pride. And there's a handful of remaining blind shamisen players who are still living this way. They became like the poster child for the old style, the old way of living. So in that time, they kind of surged to popularity. They were just playing folk songs, because again, this was all centered around the folk songs. And at this time, there were surf guitar players living in Tokyo from this region.
Oh, and started mixing up. You gotta love when that happens.
Yeah, so they picked up shamisen. From that point on, then Tsugaru Shamisen, Tsugaru Jamisen became coined as a style.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to learn about today?
That's what we're going to learn about today.
What is it about this music that you love? What drew you into it?
I got into it at like around 13, and I was already very interested in Japanese culture and such, so it was kind of like a way I could be part of the culture, in a way, the music.
Yeah.
I started out in bluegrass, but my dad lived in Japan 50 years ago, and he learned shakuhachi. So through shakuhachi, I discovered koto, then shamisen. What appeals to me a lot about shamisen is its ability to be both percussive and melodic at the same time. You can get really loud percussive, and then strings.
Awesome. Well, I'm getting soaked, so why don't we head into your workshop and check out some shamisens.
Now, before we head to Kyle's dojo, there's something that I'm very excited to announce. For the first time, I'm opening up enrollment to my brand new interactive online program called How Music Works 1.0. And this isn't just another online video course. This is me walking you through music theory in a way that you won't find anywhere else. Each week, you'll get a package containing a lesson from my course, The Rudiments, documentation, a quiz, a practice schedule, as well as weekly additional videos outlining exactly what you need to practice. There's a weekly live hangout where I'll be talking directly to the class and addressing your specific questions. And don't worry if you miss something or get behind, everything stays available indefinitely. It's an 8-week curriculum, and the only prerequisite is that you want to understand why music works the way it does. Enrollment is limited, it opens today, it closes next Friday, and class is in session the week after. It's the only time I've ever offered this, so make sure you get in while you can. If you use promo code shamisen, you'll save $25 off of tuition. You can find more at samuraiguitartheory.com. I've also put up links in the description. Anyways, let's get back to it.
All right, Kyle, we're in your workshop. Can you tell me about a shamisen, how it works, what the parts are called?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Let's start where the business is. The sound comes from is the do. As you can see, it's a cavern, rather thick, and the skin is very tight. So when you strike it with the bachi, the plectrum, it really packs a punch. This goes on in like so. Watch this gap disappear. That's...
Oh, wow, yeah, because it's so perfect there.
The tuning pegs, called itomaki.
Itomaki.
Held in with friction alone. This is called a nail, which means sound tail. The string just wraps on there. Traditionally, all three are made from silk. This one is fully silk, and this is tetron, kind of a nylon.
So you get all the strings on, everything's attached. Next thing is this little, what's in this?
This is a coma case. Now, the coolest element, some say it's the most important part of shamisen, is the buzzy tone called sawari, which means touching, basically, which is a block that rotates from a screw in the back.
Yeah.
And that elevates to get just the right level of buzz you want.
At this point, like, we're good to go and rock out. All right, so I guess this is my first shamisen / Japanese music lesson. Yeah, take it away, Kyle. Tell me what I need to know.
All right. Let's first put on our finger pants.
Finger pants?
Our finger pants, called the yubi suri. Okay. Yubi meaning finger, suri meaning slide.
Okay.
Index finger.
Okay.
And the other will go over the thumb. Over, yeah.
Look at that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's so polished, the neck, that the friction from the skin kind of catches. Especially there's just 3 strings you're doing a lot of moving up and down.
Next we got the
bachi. Putty knives.
Windshield scraper.
Windshield scraper, exactly. Hold the bachi, the shaft, in between the ring and the pinky. Thumb will be flat against the blade.
Like this?
Like that. Great, great. It'll be going up this way and down to the skin.
I can touch the skin with it? Like, it's
yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to go through.
No. The feeling you should have is that the bachi will strike through to your stomach. Not that you'll use that much force, but it's just that feeling to have for a solid tone.
Can you show me?
Yeah. That's very good.
Oh man, this is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Keep going, keep going.
I'm just jamming.
Jam it.
As far as just like physically, the physical playing of this thing, that's probably as good as it's going to get today.
Yeah.
So could you show me like I don't know, a song, a scale, or like what's our...
Let's do a song.
We're learning a song. What song are we learning?
Old folk song called Kokiri Kobushi.
Kokiri Kobushi.
Kokiri Kobushi.
It sounds just like a kind of pentatonic-y type of thing.
Yeah.
Are we like, I guess at this point, like we're not figuring out, like, I don't even know what the note names are, but does it matter? Or is this music very much predominantly a thing where it's like, hey, play this sounds cool?
I mean, it's all interesting. Like one, it's all folk music.
It's not like the classical thing where you learn all the notes, you learn your scales. This is very much like, hey, I show you this, my grandpa showed me this, someone showed him that, and who cares what these notes are called? Like, I don't even know what we're tuned to.
The shamisen's tuned to the singer's vocal range. So even that, it's really open. Okay, so...
Kokiri Kobushi.
Kokiri Kobushi. Start with the chorus. And then 2 notes here. 2 notes here. Open. Middle. So don, 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 don.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it.
Hop.
What did you just say there?
Oh, just hop.
Is that like a Japanese thing? That
Yeah, just kind of like
hop. Hop to it.
San.
How do you count it in?
Traditionally, like san, up, and between those two,
san, up.
Let's spice it up a little bit.
Oh boy.
You're good. We'll be good.
I missed it.
Very close. Nice.
That's so much fun. Like, how often in life you just get to do something so completely different that you suck at, but like can kind of like have fun with?
It's the perfect instrument for that.
So say you were looking at some more advanced techniques that one might play on this.
Let's take what you just learned there, the course of Kokiri Kobushi, and then adding in all these flavors. which is
man.
not traditional, but
Yeah, but that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for my first shamisen lesson.
oh, thank you for coming.
That was a ton of fun.
You're really good.
Oh, look out, world. Now, after having some time to reflect on my brief foray into Japanese music, I'm kind of reminded of the magic that music is. See, despite having Japanese heritage, I know next to nothing about the music. And so I find myself thinking what an interesting sharing of cultures that whole thing was. Here I am, the samurai guitarist who actually predominantly grew up on African American music, learning the music of my culture from a guy of European descent who grew up on Appalachian music. And I find the sharing and intermixing of culture and art like this to be just such a wonderful thing that you only get in so many aspects of life. And you know, this really is at the heart of everything that we do. I go and learn a bunch of music, I meet another musician and I say, hey, what you do is different, but that's really great. I'm gonna take some of that stuff and mix it with what I do. New amazing things are created when we share something we love. And if you look at the origins of pretty much every genre, this is the story. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Remember, my new interactive experience, How Music Works 1.0, is now open for enrollment. And if you use promo code shamisen, you're gonna save $25 off tuition. Signups are limited. You have until next Friday to join, and then class starts the following week. And my guarantee with this is that you're gonna walk away understanding how music works, why music works the way it does, and what you can do with this to make yourself a better guitar player. I hope to see you there. It's gonna be a ton of fun. You can learn more at samuraiguitar3.com. I've also got a link in the description. And of course, if you want to dive deeper into Japanese music, Kyle Abbott has got you covered. I've got his website, his YouTube page, all of his social medias in the description. He plays shamisen, he builds shamisens, he sells shamisens. The man is a wealth of information on the subject. Thank you all for watching. Look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I'll see you again soon.
A way to speed stretch it would be to put the fingers underneath and the thumb on top, pushing down. That's what she said. No.
Oh, she says a lot.
She does. She does. Very cool.
Watching.
I like the sound, and I especially like the ice scraper.
Yeah. Just grab your ice scraper. Watching him have that fun that he started to have once he got comfortable with the three strings and took his guitar knowledge to it. I mean, it's like a cross between a banjo and a dulcimer in sound.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's basically a fretless bass, you know, 3-string fretless bass. Because I mean, I've played 4-string fretless bass, and it does really have a freeing effect when, you know, if somebody's not tuned up right, or they're playing a guitar that's a little bit out of tune, it's a little bit sharp or flat, but it's in tune with itself. Because some guitarists, they just, they tune to whatever note they hear on their own guitar, and they get to that. And if you're playing a fretless, you can just adjust to whatever you're hearing and get close enough.
I loved that he said it's tuned to this. It's tuned to the player's voice, so the player tunes the string to their vocal vibration.
That's why I play the 5-string. With the low beat.
We're gonna need a big shamisen for Glenn.
Instead of a 5-string bass, I'll have a 4-string shamisen.
Dude, I would love to try one of those electrified. Like throw a pickup in there, and I bet you could have some fun.
Oh yeah, you absolutely could. And off-the-shelf pickups would work too. I mean, just whatever you would have for an acoustic guitar hookup, setup, you could just slap that on there too.
Yeah,
I've seen some that are vibrational also, where you could have it on like the inside. That frame of the wood is nice and thick, but like you could be attached to that and be pulling the vibrations right from that.
Now that you played it, Sensei, electrify it. I will
start a metal shamisen band.
Yes, I will. I will do a whole night on shamisen if you electrify it.
Maybe even some heavy metal.
Yes, we like our heavy metal. So that was at Samurai Guitarist. Love this channel beyond words.
Oh, yeah. Always good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not even a guitarist, but one of my favorite YouTube channels.
Mm-hmm. You can pick up stuff anyway, and it's just entertaining in general.
Now, what makes things pleasurable? or makes you happy?
Neurotransmitters. Here we go.
This is a question that, like, I think ties into creativity, why we create, what we're trying to accomplish. Sometimes the reward we get out of it. It it goes to what we've talked about last week with the cannabis and effects on creativity and music and psychology. How we please ourselves creatively. There's some ties to us biologically with serotonin and dopamine. These are two things that our body does that tie to us creatively. At least I feel.
Yeah. And some of it is, and creativity has many different forms. It could be just coming up with a creative idea. It doesn't have to be the actual creation of some masterpiece work of art. It can just be the thought of what would be a cool project to start working on. That kind of stuff can also have releases of those kinds of chemicals in your brain because you have, you've put in the mental thought of the process or the project.
And the
already.
reward or motivation we get from doing that. And make us want to do more and more.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're getting a little sciencey here. From
and this one was suggested to us like through the algorithm because of like what we've been searching the last couple of weeks with the psychology of music.
Yeah, I like it.
It's
adding another good element.
Fit mind meditation and optimizing your mind with videos on meditation and neuroscience. I mean, it's the 21st century.
Yep. Great stuff. Serotonin versus dopamine. Difference between pleasure and happiness.
Dopamine is the learning neurotransmitter. It is the positive reinforcement neurotransmitter. It is the transmitter that says, this feels good, I want more. Now, serotonin is the opposite. It's the neurotransmitter that says, this feels good, I don't want or need anymore. Those are clearly two different things. And the problem is, if you don't know the difference, then you are basically subject to continuing to try to reward yourself ad nauseum. Now, there's a third component to this pathway that is absolutely essential, and it's called cortisol. So cortisol is the stress hormone. And what cortisol does, which is particularly important in this story, is it works on this part of your brain right here, the part right behind your forehead, the part right above your eyes, called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that keeps you from doing stupid things. I call it the Jiminy Cricket part of your brain, like for Pinocchio. Bottom line, if you have a dysfunctional prefrontal cortex, you can't see the future. You only live for the moment. Prefrontal cortical dysfunction is what turns a human into a lizard. Okay? Doesn't matter what happens in the future. I need my reward now. And so there's no ability to cognitively inhibit that feeling of reward. And that then drives the dopamine even faster. And ultimately, that's what leads to neuronal cell death. So it's the combination of dopamine and cortisol that leads to addiction. So reward is good. Reward plus stress is not. And that's what we all are now, is chronically stressed. And so chronic stress makes you want reward because of this lizard brain. And so it sets you up for addiction. Now on the other side, on the serotonin side, chronic stress also, and cortisol has an effect as well. So serotonin does bind to its receptor to inhibit the next neuron. The problem is that the serotonin receptor is downregulated by cortisol. So less serotonin, fewer receptors, that's depression. So addiction and depression both occur, one due to dopamine, one due to lack of serotonin, but in the presence of cortisol, in the presence of chronic stress. So chronic stress is what belies both of these two major afflictions of the human condition. There is one reward system. One. Now, that reward system is pretty darn important. If you don't receive reward, you don't get out of bed. You actually lie in bed and die, is what happens. And that's been done in transgenic animals. They've basically, knocked out the reward system, and those animals have no will to live. Okay, you need reward to be able to get up in the morning, go to work, make a living, bring home a paycheck, eat food, etc. All right? So reward is survival of the species. You cannot do it without reward. However, reward and contentment are not the same thing. Reward and pleasure are synonymous. Contentment and happiness are synonymous. So people in our society have confused and conflated these two concepts, pleasure and happiness. So I find that there are 7 differences between the two, and people need to understand these differences in order to be able to make head or tail of, number 1, the world, and number 2, how they're being manipulated by the world in order to make them miserable. So those 7 things, so the 7 differences. 1, pleasure is short-term, like a meal. Happiness is long-term, like a lifetime. 2, pleasure is visceral. You feel it in your body. Happiness is ethereal. You feel it above the neck. 3, pleasure is taking, like from a casino. Happiness is giving, like Habitat for Humanity. Number 4, pleasure is achieved alone, like a chocolate cake. Happiness is achieved in social groups, like a birthday party. Number 5, pleasure is achievable with substances, like, for instance, cocaine, heroin. Happiness is not achievable with substances. Number 6, the extremes of pleasure, whether it be substances or behaviors. So substances like cocaine, heroin, nicotine, alcohol, sugar, or behaviors. So shopping, gambling, social media, internet, gaming, pornography. Okay. In the extreme are addictive. There's an aholic after every one of those. Shopaholic, sexaholic, alcoholic, chocoholic, etc. But there's no such thing as being addicted to too much happiness. And number 7, and perhaps the most important for this conversation, pleasure is dopamine and happiness is serotonin. So, 2 different neurotransmitters, 2 different areas of the brain, 2 different regulatory pathways, 2 different mechanisms of action, 2 different drivers. So you say, like, so what? Why do we care? Here's why we care. Dopamine is an excitatory neurotransmitter. When dopamine binds to its receptor, the next neuron gets excited. Okay? Postsynaptic receptor activation. Now, neurons like to be excited. Neurons like to be tickled. But they don't like to be bludgeoned. Chronic overstimulation of any neuron in the body leads to neuronal cell death. Okay? And the reason is because neurons are so metabolically active and neurotransmission is so metabolically taxing that if you just keep it up and keep it up and keep it up, that neuron is basically going to exhaust and die. And so the postsynaptic neuron that has the dopamine receptors on it, it has a fail-safe. It has a protective mechanism in order not to be overwhelmed. What it does is it downregulates the dopamine receptor. So now that, even though you have lots of ligands, lots of dopamine molecules, you have fewer receptors, which means there's less chance that any molecule will find the receptor. And what that means in human terms is you need more and more to get less and less. and that's the phenomenon we call tolerance. So dopamine leads to tolerance. And then when those neurons actually do start to die, that's called addiction. Now, serotonin, this other neurotransmitter, is not excitatory. It's inhibitory. Now, if you're inhibitory and if you're inhibiting the next neuron, do you need to downregulate the receptor? No, because the neuron's not going to die, because it's not being overexcited. It's being, if anything, over-inhibited. All right? So there's no such thing as overdosing on too much happiness. But there's one thing that downregulates serotonin: dopamine. So the more pleasure you seek, the more unhappy you get. And if you don't know the difference between reward and contentment, if you don't know the difference between pleasure and happiness, and you are led astray by, say, Coca-Cola, open happiness, or, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, or, any of these other, sort of memes and mantras that have entered our, collective lexicon about the fact that you want to, quote, get happy by taking this substance, you are sadly mistaken, and, ultimately it will do a number on you. And it's been doing a number on hundreds of millions of people, in particular over the last 50 years, as public relations and and now the internet have come into the fore.
I want to have a fit mind.
Oh yeah, definitely a good idea.
I love
Gotta have
the theory behind what he's talking about there, and the reward system, which we're all a part of. For musicians and artists out there who are also dealing with social networks to promote themselves, and there's a lot of dopamine and serotonin going on in that process. And if you think about what he's saying there, like the dopamine highs are almost like a cancer to creativity, because you start to get addicted to that feeling of a quick fix creatively, rather than like seeking happiness, like the perfect song, the perfect album. I'd rather strive for one great song than spend a lifetime making crappy ones.
I agree there, yeah. And even then, just I don't even have to make a great song. I could just make a song that I enjoy playing, that I like the sound of. If I make something, I'm like, hey, I like that song. I don't really, to me, it doesn't really matter at this point. Like, if 1,000 people like it, if 2 people like it, if 1,000,000 people like it. Like, to me, if I make something, I'm making it for me, more or less.
Well,
but if I were to release something, I would only want to release something if I felt that it was very good. Yes, of course.
If you have a reward system, if music makes you feel something when you make it, that's a reward system. Like,
oh yeah,
whether it is the dopamine, and the reasons why you do it have come with expectations that are constantly changing, because that's what social media does every day. You can't knock yourself off your creative track with that kind of reward system. But if it rewards you because you feel accomplishment, like I proved I am a musician, that's a good reward system.
Right. Now, one thing is also, not everything is all one or the other. It's not, but like, for example, just at open jams, like if you go to an open jam and you hop up on stage and you're going to play music with people you've never played with before, this is a social setting. This is a social event. And, you're trying to work with other musicians. And if you have a good jam session and everybody sounded great together, and, everybody in the crowd loved it. And, as you're driving home, like, you got a big smile, like the whole way home.
If I would,
you did a bunch of good things. It's not a short-term high. It's a little bit of both. It's there's definitely long-term happiness from it. There's the building of the relationships with the musicians. There's the outcome of a good song just from throwing something together. Making something happen just on the spot. That kind
Getting a cute girl in the crowd to stare back at you. Reward system.
Yeah, exactly. And rewards come in different forms, as you say. Sure.
And I would call that a serotonin reward.
See.
Well,
Good
that's
stuff.
one I'm going to be keeping an eye on, that science, because I think it's a fascinating blend of psychology and chemistry, like our natural chemistry.
And just understanding the psychology and understanding why people are driven to certain ways. It also explains a lot of advertising. Like when you look at brain chemistry and you look at psychology and then you look at things like advertising, you see how advertising is designed to manipulate certain things to make you feel certain ways. And when you can see through that, when you can see the strings they're trying to pull, it can help you to not fall into and buy things that you don't want to buy just because they put the candy bar at the aisle, checkout aisle. It doesn't mean you have to buy it. I understand the trick they're playing, but I don't have to follow.
That is the part of it that I want to understand the most. I don't like subliminal marketing. I want to buy that shit because I want it, not because you programmed it into my brain with visuals and sometimes like just word stimuli. Say these words and people will run to McDonald's.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, different things coming up in our feeds because we've searched for different things lately, or videos that we've watched. I've had some of the same type of stuff come up from other channels as well. One was on things like psychological traps and things like that, and it's just and manipulation tactics was another one where it just really lays out just the as quickly as possible. It just like mentions what it's called, like what the tactic is called, like cheerleading or whatever, and then describes it really quickly and then moves on to the next one. So it's just a really quick boom boom boom, but just seeing all these tactics and then counting how many of them are used in car commercials or how many of them are used in any advertising that you receive, and you'll be able to like watch a commercial now and you're like, okay, this one has this and this. Like you pick out the 4 or 5 different tactics that are coming at you right off the bat, and you understand how they're trying to.
And if you're hunting YouTube for like psychological things like that, narcissists, gaslighting, these are there's no shortage of people out there explaining what these are.
Oh yeah. Because it's important, to understand the tactics that are being used in order to, defend yourself against them. Essentially, in some of these cases,
and they're being used more because we have the internet, and you can be exposed to a lot more of it.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Yeah. Now, I think we have time for one more. And we had Fit Mind here, which we appreciate. We're back for more there.
Oh yeah, for sure. At Fit Mind Meditation, I'm gonna exercise that brain.
Yes, indeed.
But this goes to a topic that every musician nowadays might face, depending on how they're approaching putting together their song. Like a lot of beats incorporate previous beats. Sampling has been something that has always been there in the digital age, but the rules are changing, and how like a song can't get distributed because it's using parts of other songs. And when you do that, you got to get your ducks in a row. If you don't, then you're not taking your song serious, and you really shouldn't release it.
Exactly. And that's where it comes down to is the stuff that you want to take seriously, you need to do the right way, and incorporating other stuff into your work. You got to make sure, there are right ways to do it. And unfortunately, a lot of people do it in the wrong ways. So it's important to know the differences and know how to.
When it comes to what they consider a sample, you have to ask if your source, if it includes like an actual sample of a beat or a piece of recorded music, which is one part of a sample's copyright. The other half is who actually wrote the song.
Songwriter,
There's 2 parts to getting licenses when it comes to samples.
And as you mentioned, some people just have an absolute no policy when it comes to, allowing any of their music, any part of any of their music to be used in any way. So there will be times those fights you can't win.
And that actually leads to why he even had this discussion was, I think it's Kanye West, wanted to do a song, and Donna Summers, the estate, he's gonna talk about it, what instigated this discussion, and it's something that's just recent.
Mm-hmm. And which channel is this from again?
This one's coming from DJ Payne 1.
Nice.
At DJ Payne 1 over on YouTube.
There you go.
Multi-platinum producer, right. And he does know his shit, man, when it comes to this subject.
Mm-hmm. Now let's see why producers just don't clear samples.
The talk. A lot of you still don't understand how sample clearance works, and it scares me. And here's why. Because at some point, I hope this happens sooner than later for you, but at some point you're going to get a big record, whether it's a major placement with a artist that's signed to a major label, whether it's a big sync placement, a song that just ends up going viral. Not understanding this could cause problems for you if you sample, especially if you believe this particular myth or you try to do some sneaky stuff to avoid sample clearance. Now, hopefully, you still don't believe the lies that you can sample a certain amount of a song and it's legal and you don't have to clear it, or you can flip a sample and as long as you transform it that somehow you don't have to clear that sample, or that the fair use doctrine somehow applies to you sampling a song to make a beat. Those are some of the basic lies that we've been told about sample clearance. That's what happens when we take music business advice from YouTube comment sections from people with 1 subscriber, a 10-year-old account, and a username that looks like one of those incredibly strong suggested passwords from Google. There's this big sample clearance lie that I've been seeing people not only believe but also spread, especially in my comment section lately. I don't know why, but I need to address it because it's happening right here on my channel. Now, shout out to you if you're watching my video. If you're leaving comments, I appreciate that. What I would appreciate, though, is not spreading misinformation because you never know who's watching. The comment section tends to be like the Wild Wild West. This is how these harmful and potentially career-destroying myths end up being spread. I'm not here to disrespect anyone in the comment section. I wish this didn't happen, but also you did give me an idea for this video. These are a couple comments that I got on the same video. This has to do with Kanye West getting sued for sample clearance. If you don't know what happened, basically Kanye West sampled a Donna Summer record. He couldn't get it cleared, so he replayed it and changed it up a little, and now they're suing him because they didn't clear it. This commenter says that because Kanye West attempted to clear the sample and it was denied, he has the right to just change the sample up a little, and now he can't technically get sued. That's absolutely not true. Here's someone else who puts it a little more plainly. Kanye is known for sample recreation using session players. Okay, I've done that before. I've replayed samples. I did it on the La Pat Pony record. We didn't want to sample Timbaland's Genuine record, Pony, so I recreated it and we avoided the master clearance. More on this later. We still had to clear it with them. I'll explain. Some call it interpolation. Well, the law calls it interpolation, and the musician's job is to recreate the sample as close as possible. That is a cover version, so no permission needed. On College Dropout, he uses Kevin Lewis, he means Ken Lewis, for many tracks for sample recreation. I don't know that to be true at all. Somebody tell me, but I have a feeling that Music Clover... Is that supposed to say music lover? Come on. Music Lover 7704. I doubt that guy was there at the College Dropout sessions. Now, this is a conversation that is ongoing in the music producer community. It's a burning question. If you replay a sample, if you recreate it from scratch, do you have to clear it? It's a mystery, right? No, it's not a mystery. The answer is yes, you still have to clear it. Let's check out TrackLib. Now, TrackLib is co-founded by Deborah Manis Gardner, the queen of sample clearance. Look her up. If you replay or recreate a sample note for note and use it in a new production, but do not use the original audio, then it's called interpolation. If you interpolate music, you still have to get permission from the right holders of the composition, but not on the master because you're not using the pre-existing sound recording. Someone who actually clears samples wrote this. Back to the chart. Normally when I show this chart, I'm talking to producers about their intellectual property when it comes to a beat. Now, a beat and a song are the same. They're both recorded pieces of music, because every recorded piece of music automatically generates 2 copyrights. That means when you clear a sample, you have to clear both of these copyrights. You have to clear the master recording and you have to clear the composition. Now, if you replay the sample, if you create a new master recording, no, you don't have to clear this side, which is great. It makes it easier. It makes it, twice as easy, because you've just eliminated half of the work. But you do have to clear this portion, because when you recreate a sample, you're still using the original composition, and the original composers still have to give you permission. So why can't producers clear samples? Well, they can, but it's probably absolutely pointless. Why, you ask? Well, because if I clear a sample for an instrumental, that sample is only cleared for use in my instrumental. Now, before you say it in the comments, I know you're going to say it, TrackLib is different, right? TrackLib has a pre-clearance license on the songs that are in their database, but this is something unique to TrackLib specifically. And I do believe if one of the sample creators, someone who's a rights holder, someone who owns some part of that song, either on the underlying composition or the sound recording or both, if they object to the content of your song, they can pull the plug on that clearance. And I also know this is going to come up in the comments too. What about Splice? What about Splice? Splice is royalty free. Royalty free sounds do not require sample clearance. That is the entire point of the royalty free model. So back to what I was saying. Let's say I sample Donna Summer's song, I Feel the Love, in a beat. I really like the beat. I want to get the sample cleared because I feel like this beat could go somewhere. What would I have to do to get that sample cleared? Donna Summer, I Feel Love. It was released in 1977 on Atlantic Records. Cool, so you think you have to just clear it with Atlantic, right? Because Atlantic, as a record label, owns the master recording. However, if you recall that chart, there are 2 different and separate copyrights to every single recorded piece of music. One is the master, one is the underlying composition. When you sell a beat to a label, or when you get signed to a label as an artist, the label pays you and assumes ownership of your master recording copyright. They don't, and they shouldn't, touch your underlying composition. That's separate. So the owners of the underlying composition are the people who wrote the song. It's written by Donna, Giorgio, and Pete. So you would have to clear it with them. Well, Donna Summer is unfortunately deceased, so you would have to clear it with her estate. Okay, so now that's 3 different entities you have to clear it with, right? Atlantic Records, Donna Summer, Giorgio Moroder, and Pete B. But it does not end there. Each of these writers has their own publisher. Look down here on I Feel Love, we have Rick's Music. I don't know who Rick's Music is representing, but each one of the co-writers, Giorgio, Pete, and then the songwriter Donna Summer, they have their own publishing entity as well that you would have to clear it with. So now we're talking, you got to clear it with Atlantic Records, you got to clear it with the 3 writers, and then you have to clear it with 3 more publishing entities. That's a lot. It's a lot of work. I mean, it'd be hard enough just trying to get a hold of these folks. They're celebrities. So, all right, I really want to clear this record. I somehow do it. I fly all over the world. I get it done. I spend thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars maybe. And I send this beat to Kanye West, right? And he picks it for his Vultures album. He's about to release it. Then Donna Summer's estate says, nah, we're not clearing this. But wait, you already cleared it with me. I paid thousands of dollars. I traveled to Italy. I did everything I had to do to clear the sample for my beat. They cleared the sample for my beat, but as we saw in the real world case of Kanye West being sued by Donna Summer's estate, they object to Kanye West. Has nothing to do with me or my beat. They cleared the sample for me. They didn't clear the sample for him. And they, Donna Summer's estate, like many others in the music industry, are stonewalling Kanye for his recent complimentary comments about a certain famous fascist genocidal figure in history. Not the current genocidal fascist that we know and love, but the dead one. So I just wasted all that time, energy, and money on nothing. And that's why there's no reason for me, as the producer, to clear that sample. You notice that it's artists generally who complain about sample clearance denial and not producers. Why is that? Yeah, because beats generally aren't controversial. But artists, the statements they make, the lives they lead, they tend to be, their lyrical content tends to be controversial. A lot of artists are religious. A lot of artists have particular political leanings. And so when somebody who samples them writes a song that goes against those morals, there's a chance that they won't clear that sample. And as I showed you with the Donna Summer example, there are 3 artists, 3 writers. The labels probably won't care. They'll probably clear the sample, maybe not, but they probably will. The publishers probably will too. But those 3 writers, if any one of them denies sample clearance, it's dead in the water. Whereas celebrities like Kanye give interviews, their statements and their ideas, their mishaps are widely reported in the news media. Producers, for the most part, are unknown. We don't know their political leanings. We don't know the intimate details of their lives. I mean, you probably know mine if you follow me on Twitter. But Donna Summer's estate doesn't know me from a can of paint. So hopefully this clears some things up and you don't go around believing and spreading myths that could potentially get you in a legal bind. Do your research, read books, talk to the experts, get information from reliable sources, because Mosaic0757 might not know what he's talking about. Much success to you. Appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Peace.
Oh my God, can you believe all the legal hassles that you have to go through to do something like that?
And that's why so many people just don't, or they do and get sued and they go, why? You're like, there's a reason.
Well, in that kind of situation, it was already signed off, and the only reason why the game changes, the rules change during the game in that kind of scenario. If the estate didn't like Kanye and said, well, we might have sold this producer the rights to do this, but we don't want Kanye associated with it. Well, that wasn't in the contract to start.
Well,
but
it is a whole separate song.
Injected into the contract as it went along.
Not really. Again, the point was just the fact, not about Kanye specifically, but the point was just about the fact that he cleared, he could clear the beat, but then whatever the track turns into after that, it's not automatically cleared, because again, anybody could come up with, throw, racist or whatever kind of lyrics on top of something, and you wouldn't want that associated with your song in the first place. So that would be an entirely separate application for, for clearance. And if they deny it, then they deny it, and you can't use it. That's just the way that works. I mean, I get why it's that way. I mean, you wouldn't like it if somebody started like using your material and throwing stuff on it that you didn't like, and just having them put it out there and get paid for it, because it's, because, oh, you said it was okay because of the original, part of it was okay. So I get it.
Well, the estates of families that control certain music like that are definitely picking and choosing like who they're allowing to be associated to it. You saw that with Eminem, with Vivek Ramaswamy last year. He's like, that I don't want that dude singing my songs.
To me, it's more about just, people can, if you're a musician, you're a producer, whatever, make music. You don't have to make other people's music. This only comes into play when you're trying to use somebody else's stuff, right? I mean, somebody else composed it, somebody else has the master recordings. Well, if you make your own, if you write your own music and use your own master recordings, then you don't have to do any of that. Like, all of a sudden, you own those rights off the bat because you did the stuff. So this is only affecting if you're trying to release cover songs for money. And I get why there are hoops that you have to jump through for it, for sure.
Given that, like, they are capable of making their own music, you have to ask, how important is this battle? Like, do we really need to use that beat? In the old days, beats are not copyrightable. Drum beats are not something that, it's not like a melody. Like, there is an algorithm in YouTube that picks up melody and says, like, ooh, that's Celine Dion's lead vocal melody. It recognizes that.
Mm-hmm.
But drum beats,
there's only so many ways you can break up a measure,
and you can bang on different sounds with the same beat. It's not the same thing.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is like, if you, as you said at the beginning, oh, I like this Donna Summer beat, I want to turn it into something. Well, you could make a similar beat that's, like you said, it's not close enough to be exactly that. You just have to modify it enough that it's in that style. It has the elements that you liked about the Donna Summer beat, but it's not that beat, and you're making a totally new song that has that feel but isn't that song. So then they would have no grounds to stand on to block you, because it's not that song. It's just that kind of a groove, and I liked it because of this and that, so I added those elements into something new that I'm going to make.
Well, if you're going to play in the style of blues, you're going to sound like something that's been done in blues.
Yeah, again, there's only so many notes, and there's only so many, like if we're going to have a song that's in 6/8 time, or if we're going to have a song that's in 4/4 time, I mean, there's only so many ways to break that up. Is it four kick drum, hits per measure? Well, I mean, there's a lot of songs that go that way, and they can't say, hey, my song had 4 kick drum hits per measure. You can't do that. You're copying my song. That's why that's not there. But if there's a very, distinct, drum beat that is part of a song, and you're trying to steal that and use it for your own, that's a different story. And then you get kind of Vanilla Iced, right? So I mean, that's
the Vanilla Ice syndrome.
Exactly. But some excellent stuff, and again, a little bit of a grab bag today, all over the map, a little bit of something for everybody. Smorgasbord.
Yeah, we went all over.
Yeah,
hey, Big Glenn.
Hey. It's deep. That's what happens. I get a big head. See, at the end of the night. Or
swelling with knowledge.
Exactly. But always a pleasure to see everybody on a Thursday. Thanks for joining us all on another Talking Shhh IT with Glenn and Tony.
Oh, and that virtual machine, we'll go through that process next week.
Yeah, because again, that's something that I think would be a good process, and just to be able to even, just to jump in and look at workflow if we need to for different things and see where we're at.
Yeah,
I like it.
I've been asked to do it a couple times.
Indeed. And don't forget to join us tomorrow night either. Who's going to be here tomorrow?
Tatius at 9, and Ange I think has a playlist at 10. So
nice. So join us tomorrow and join us next week with some more Talking Shhh I.T. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Shhh I.T. We're now Scottish.
I was going to say we got the Irish weekend, so we should have done something for that.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of that.
Don't get arrested on St. Paddy's Day. No need for that. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks.
Night, everyone.
Ambient noise, yeah.
So now you're grabbing some band lab clips.
Now for me, that would also be something where I would use like volume automation and like bring that from the bottom, like bring it in and then bring it back out.
These are the kinds of sounds you can stretch. With this AI, like stretching it actually can be cool.
Oh, that was perfect for the interlude too.
Ends it right in the right
I
spot.
didn't even notice. 40. The texture faded out at the interlude until it happened. I'm like, wait a minute.
Sometimes you just, it was just meant to be that way.